We'd like to welcome you all to our Iron County Commission meeting this Monday, the 28th day of September, 2020. It's 9:02 a.m. and appreciate your attendance. We will begin this meeting today with a prayer offered by our county engineer, Steve Platt, and our pledge led by Mike Edwards, our attorney.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful this beautiful fall day in Iron County to be together in a commission meeting. We're thankful for the freedoms which we enjoy in America. We're thankful for this good land. We ask that that will help each of us in our respective responsibilities to do the best we can to serve the citizens of Iron County, protect our land, and to keep it as good as we have found it. We're thankful, Father, for the many blessings we enjoy. We ask thou continue to bless us. Thanks we give, and this we say in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the minute approval portion of the meeting. We are looking at the minutes of September 14th, 2020. Is there any? We had a couple of corrections that we had made, but I think we went over those and we're good. Any other comments?
No.
Or corrections?
I move approval of the minutes, Iron County Commission minutes of September 14th, 2020.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of September 14th, 2020. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. We'll go to our department reports this morning. We'll start with our building and zoning and planning. Have we got anyone here for that this morning? Looks like we don't right now. So we'll go ahead and go to the engineer, Steve Platt. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, you've seen this list before, but it is getting shorter, I promise. I want to talk about the yellow items. If you have any questions on any of the other items, please ask me. Happy to report our budget is on track. We just received $66,000 from the Forest Service, which is the final payment on the two bridges which we built off of Highway 143 up Parowan Canyon, first left hand and second left hand. So the Forest Service has paid us the full $700,000 which they gave us to do those bridges. Cost just a little bit more than that, but that extra came out of my special projects. So that item is completed. It's number 12 down on the list that I've crossed off. Preston wants to do some crushing for the road out to Newcastle, the Hart Road. That's the one that goes from Newcastle directly north and stair steps for about 6 miles to get to the Antelope Road. We're working with Bob Holt. He has a material source there at the south end of Newcastle, and he will allow us to do some crushing there. So I'm putting that package together. Number 3, some very good news we received 2 weeks ago. Lance Smith with NRCS has given us $325,000. That's a grant to help us complete the Parowan Valley Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention EIS. It started out as an EA, things we have to do before we can spend federal money on construction. This is basin-wide. It takes in Paraguna, Red Creek, Little Creek Canyons, Summit, and Parowan. So they'll complete the EIS, and then hopefully a year or two after that we'll be able to go to construction. I've given Alma notice that on Wednesday of this week, we need to meet with McMillan's and Lance, talk about everything they're going to do, set up the procedure to sign a contract, and let them get going. So that's underway. We continue to have more than usual requests for new addresses and encroachment permits. I think we've got a lot of people moving in on the western half of the county, some of those old subdivisions that were done so long ago, and we're getting a few more than usual requests for addresses out there. We are in the process, as we do every time at this year, of updating our Class B mileage. So the state of Utah gives us more dollars because of the additional roads that Preston has chip sealed this last summer. We get mileage for paved roads, graveled roads, and dirt roads, and that formula is all set up, but they need to know our mileage, and we update that annually. I'm assuming shortly we will get some information from the Forest Service on the 5 Mile campground, actually be able to have a meeting and maybe do some work up there. This a year ago, FEMA came to us, talked about the floodplain mapping that was being done in the Cedar Valley. They said they were disappointed in a lot of it because it was made from from quad sheets. They have 20-foot contours. It's pretty hard to find a water surface on a 20-foot vertical contour. So they're flying the whole county with LIDAR to get 2-foot contours. The bottom line is that means the FEMA maps for the Cedar Valley won't be completed until about 2026. And then we'll have the opportunity to go through all the public comments and maybe finally get some floodplain maps.
They're
for
gonna
Cedar Valley.
they're gonna have a 2-foot resolution for the whole county.
Yes, they're going for the whole county. I said, that's absolutely ridiculous. You're spending a bunch of money we don't need to. A lot of the county's not in a floodplain. You don't need that. But they want that good information, so that's what they're doing. And the last, and there's a letter contained here that explains a little bit more about that if you want more details. And the last list is the to-do list for our excavator operator, Curtis DeMille, things he is working on. We always have plenty for him to do. Are there any questions? Thank you.
No.
I need to be excused because I have another commitment, so I'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that good
Matt,
report.
see you on Wednesday.
Lester, you here to report for the building department? We'll jump back to you. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, Terry's asked me to give this report for him today. We had a lot of inspections, so I came in to help him out this morning. So
Great.
we're going to start with the total building permits. You're probably familiar with this form. We've been using it for a couple of years now. But total building permits in just the unincorporated area, year to date, we're at 241. That's actually quite a big jump from last year, as you can see. How that works out with your single-family dwellings, this is not counting Parowan, Bryan Head areas we contract with. That's 83 new homes to date, 32 new remodels, then 68 accessory buildings. There's 28 solar this year, which actually that numbers have actually dropped in the years past from past years. And then you have our miscellaneous and electrical permits. We have 26. And then we have 4 commercial permits to date. That's in the unincorporated area. In the other areas that we contract with, they have 67 total permits, 13 of them being new family dwellings, 15 addition and remodels, 12 accessories, 2 solar systems, and 21 gas or power, and then 4 new commercial buildings. As you can tell, COVID has not hurt this industry one bit. If anything, it's actually increased us a bunch, because we're sitting right now with our numbers about where we ended last year. Then, since the report in June, we have issued 154 new permits since June. We've done 148 plan reviews and have done 1,198 inspections. And those are just, those inspections break out to, we've been to that house that many times. That inspection could include a 4-way, which would be your electrical, plumbing, mechanical, framing. It's all in, we're counting all that as one inspection. So that's a lot of manpower right there. And then on the zoning side of it, I had Chelsea get some numbers for me quick this morning. We have sent out 27 zoning violation letters. That is actually since June. That's not counting the ones that we have just dealt with verbally, and as people just came into compliance willingly and easily. A lot of those that we are still following up on, but with everything we're doing, the department is we're running hard, and it's when I started looking at the numbers, it's like, as I told Terry this morning, I'm like, that understands why I'm tired at the end of the day. So, but on the building side of it, not the building inspection, but the building side of it, we are, working on a variety of projects that you guys are aware of. We just finished putting solar on the visitor center, which was paid for by a grant from, it was originally First Wind, and I can't remember who it went to now. But most of that was actually paid for by a grant. We'll be getting a placard together that indicates who paid for it, and which actually will be nice, because that actually will cut down our costs on that particular building. Then we are currently in the middle of the remodel for the attorney's office. They started framing that, and they wired it last week. We're waiting on some door frame before we can go much further. We just had to order them in. They were back ordered. There was some confusion between me and the contractor on that. And then we have our annual maintenance, which is probably a little lacking, but we've been kind of pulling Nate away from doing what he needs to do to keep our head above water for the building side of it.
Did Nate go out to Burl and get those doors grouted?
Yeah, they have been. He caulked them. It wasn't last Friday, but the Friday or the Thursday before. We were going to have them go out this week. We didn't have time.
Okay.
So they've been. He got the trim on the front door all done.
Okay.
And then everything has been caulked. He just needs to go back out and grout them.
Okay.
And so, it actually should be pretty good, because now it's been sitting there for a week. It shouldn't blow out at all at this point.
Right. Excuse me. That's great. Thank you.
Then, and then they also for your information, the remodel on the, for the new crime lab is underway. They are making pretty good progress on that. They'll actually should be done with that by the end of December. So the first, they'll actually start paying rent in December for that building. That's quite exciting. We had to learn what a couple things were hanging off in the ceiling, and we made enough phone calls to find out that this weird box is actually so the officers can use their radios in the basement. We had no idea what it was.
Remind me who the contractor is on that?
It's Bud Mahaz. But the nice thing with that project, we don't really have to do much. I attend a meeting a couple weeks, every 2 weeks, and then we do the inspections. But the state of Utah is doing everything on that, where it was for them. They brought in their own project manager. We just kind of I oversee our interest in the building as the building owners.
So DFCM is taking care of that?
Yeah, DFCM is taking care of that.
Did you have to relocate that box, or what'd you do?
It's actually going to be brought down through the ceiling. We didn't know what it was, and so it was like, well, do we leave it up in the ceiling? Do we brought it down? And I finally made enough phone calls to find out what it was, and said, yes, we need to drop that down through the ceiling, because that is something that you're going to want, as you know, you are for law enforcement personnel. They're going to want to be able to have communication when they're in there. So.
If you can just let me know when he's done grouting those jams at Burl, I can have Rebbers go out and paint those doors.
Okay. Yeah. That hopefully we'll be done this week. So we'll let you know when we're done. So.
Carter's start. Yep.
I don't know if they've been to the building. We have done a lot of submittals.
Mm-hmm.
I've been getting a lot of submittals. We've approved the windows, and they're ordered. A lot of stuff that we're worried about getting. We're getting them ordered now. So then
We had a meeting with Carter's, and the materials are really hard to get right now. So we've got to really be on top of it to get what we need. So.
yeah, and then I have that contract for you. That's later on.
Preston let me borrow a forklift. I went up and moved their shed out back and out of the way. So I know they've got a dumpster up there to start tearing that deck apart. So.
Yeah, I think I haven't talked to him since you sent me that text, but I'm assuming they'll be up there ripping stuff apart this week with everything I've talked with them about. So I think they just needed to get some blue stakes and everything in order, so they didn't get in trouble when they started ripping into the ground up there.
Right.
So, but
Perfect.
they're sticking with that schedule, and it's going to be done first week in January. So
That's awesome.
I met with the architect actually this morning
Okay.
on that job. So
Great. Okay.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Just one thing, just thanks on the zoning end of it. I know we've been working with those couple of different issues. I've gotten some feedback from the residents in those neighborhoods, and they're appreciative. They're starting to see some changes, and they're appreciative of the efforts.
yeah,
And I tell them often, it's not an overnight fix when you're dealing with the government, but we're plugging away at it, and we have to do things legally.
yeah. That's the hard part. There's a lot of times you want to go in there and just say, "Hey, get rid of all this stuff." We have to be able to get it so whenever Mike has to take it to court, he actually has the due process behind it, that we can win the court case and not say, "Hey, these guys skipped all over that."
They are appreciative of the efforts, and I am too. It's nice to, when they call, to say, "Yep, we've done this, this, and this." So thank you.
Yeah. One thing I did forget to cover, I left it in my folder. We are going to enter into an interlocal agreement with Enix City, just to cover Enix inspections when their inspector is on vacation. So it's not a huge manpower issue. It's, he's gone for a day or two. Terry and I they'll log us into their system, and we will take care of their inspections. And it actually is a two-way agreement. So if something happened and all of us had to go at the same time, their inspector would come and help us as well.
Oh, good.
So it's this kind of a mutual agreement. No money is going to change hands or any of that, but we're we do have an agreement that we're going to be signing with them
Perfect.
with that. So
Thanks, Lester. Appreciate it. Let's see. We're to landfill. Bruce Anderson.
Thank you. I set the information up on your keyboards earlier. This grid report is the second one, and we can just start there. This is just a snapshot from January 1st until today for 2020, 2019, 18, and 17, just for the last 4 years, just so you can kind of see what the difference is in the last 4 years. We had 22,000 customers 4 years ago, and now we got 26,000. That's tickets that came into the landfill this year. So you can see the uptick and the changes. There was quite a heavy change from last year to this year, in tonnage and in people that are coming out there. Class 1, when it says Class 1, that is household trash, and Class 4 is construction and demolition. And then we've added tire recycling on the bottom. So that's how many tires have came in. I don't know. So I'll have to check the computer. I don't know how we got tire recycling and tonnage. That doesn't make sense, but because they come in individually, they're charged one at a time. Any questions on that? It's just a kind of a clean snapshot, really,
So
where we are.
27 tons of tires so far this year.
Well, it shouldn't say that. There's got to be some kind of computer thing. Really, the easiest way is 2,756 divided by 4. And that'll tell you how many tires are there.
Yeah, we're growing by those numbers, can't you?
Oh yeah. Just like everybody else has said, we've our little county's getting bigger this year than we thought. If you want to move over to this, just the bullet points, we've added 121 new customers just this year, and some of those that's not total houses, but that is, some people get second cans, so that would be an additional can that we're picking up. Right now we're recycling our metal. The SA Recycling's out there cubing it, crushing it and cubing it, hauling it off, and there's roughly 2,000 tons of that'll be recycled this year. We've sent out 4 or 5 trucks already, and probably won't get done till the middle of October. There's a lot there, or maybe even the end of October.
How long has it been since we sold? I know we've waited and waited for the price to come up. Has it been like a year and a half or more?
Yeah, a year and a half. So we just finished our semi-annual water samples, just sent them in last week, and we're working on the re-permit process. It's getting close. The engineers, I believe, have pair 1 done, but they'll submit them to the state all at the same time. We're hoping for good things there. Our quarterly report's due next month that I got to do. All our employees are healthy and working. I'm just assuming that everybody that has COVID throws their Kleenexes away, but we're all healthy. So charging forward. And then that old compactor that burned up, we actually sold some parts off of that. We got $14,000 for the wheels and some of the other parts, and I've got an offer for $2,000 for the remaining parts, and he just got to come look at it, and we'll make a final deal. If he can get it out of there, he's going to take it, which is better than recycle fees. Just thanks to the road department, they came and patched our road, skim patched our road going up there. Looks good. It's clean. That's about it. we're busy, just like everybody else. We're busy and trucking forward.
Great. Thank you.
Any questions?
I just on the I had a call from some folks on like 6600 North Lund Highway-ish. Have you talked to them?
Absolutely, over and over and over again.
Me too.
So I don't know. So Ken and I went out, Ken from IT, and we mapped 40, I think there was 45 illegal structures out there. And I was gonna put them on the billing system, and Reed said not to, because then we'd accept them as legal. I guess the building department's working through that. But we're trying to do our best out there. We added new cans, but it's there's a lot of fighting in between the people that live there, and it's a mess.
So the most recent question that came up was signage for one of the cans.
Got one up, but like you said, we're trying.
Okay,
trying.
that was the question. They said we got one sign up. They were wondering about signage on the second can. I just said I would check
Yeah,
out.
we just agreed to put the one sign up, and then we moved a different can to another location. And I don't know how it got interpreted that there was going to be a sign there, period, because there never was. But that, like I said, we're doing our best.
Sure.
I don't know what it is about 2020, but every remote can we have is full. Modena is full. We've had people call and say, and we used to go once a month. Lund, we used to go quarterly, and now we're going sometimes twice a month.
It's full now.
Yeah. I don't know where it's coming from, to be, well,
Probably COVID.
kinda do.
Everybody's got to get out. They're
everybody,
not-
yeah, and thank goodness they can. Thank goodness they can, you're right. So that's not a bad thing that we have a county that you can get out and do some things.
Thanks
Awesome.
for taking a landfill call, Mike. I appreciate it.
Well, between the landfill and the zoning,
They
the
all, yeah.
Is there any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks,
Oh,
Bruce.
thank
Appreciate
you.
ya. We'll go to our road department. Preston Nelson.
Morning, Preston. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Commissioners. We'll just go down through what we've been doing this summer. Basically, we did a lot of patching around. The two main places we patched was out on Highway 91. We did a little over half a mile out there. Turned out really good. And then on Iron Springs Road, we did quite a bit on those two areas.
That
Kind of a test to see how it works.
it really made a difference on that old 91.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes this winter, but like to plan on do quite a bit more on 91 next year. So it went really good. So we chipped about 25 miles of roads, just various, few in Peril and Canara, Highway 91 in Canara, the Cemetery Road, some more at the Vandenberg Road, 7700 North, another one that we did. We placed some gravel up the mountain. Webster's Flat, we put some on that. Black Mountain was another one that we did, and over to Miners Peak. Hope to one day find a good gravel source up the mountain, so we don't have to haul it up there, and we can do a lot more, get a lot more done up there. So, looking ahead this winter, we will finish placing the gravel on Vandenberg Road. We got a mile and a half left of that, and that will be when we chip it next year. That'll finish that, and that'll be great. We'll start working on the Hart Road, which we did last year. We did about 2 miles of the subgrade, and we'll get the rest of the subgrade this winter.
Remind me where that is, the Hart Road.
It's straight north of Newcastle, like
Oh, yes, okay.
by the service
We
station
talked
there.
about that, didn't we, with Steve? Yeah, I got you. Okay.
And then, as Steve said, we'll be crushing gravel in Newcastle, really close to the job, so that's going to really help that out. We'll be cleaning some culverts in case we get some rain. Hopefully we get to use those soon.
Maybe you shouldn't clean them, and I'll leave my windows down.
I'll wash your car.
Wash your car maybe, huh? And then we have a few cattle guards we're going to be replacing on the 8 Mile Road. We have some on up Modena Canyon that are older that we're going to put better ones in there and then take those over onto 8 Miles. You got any other questions?
You guys are doing great.
No.
Appreciate you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Preston.
I would like to personally thank you for sending that up. All of the citizens out there are ecstatic.
Yeah, I haven't had any complaints out there last night. They just moved.
Wait till you get the bill, Bill. Just kidding. Okay, commission reports.
I can give you a travel log, but I won't do that. I've been gone for 10 days and taking a well-deserved vacation and helping kids move from the east to Utah. What a wonderful thing to do.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so I don't have anything. Thank you.
Glad you're home safe.
Oh, yeah.
Paul and I both attended the USAC conference this last week. I have no idea what that stands for. The USAC conference, basically all of the commissioners in the state get together, organized by the Utah Association of Counties. That takes place twice a year usually, and this one was the first in-person meeting for the most part. It's just a really good opportunity to coordinate and speak with other commissioners throughout the state. It's a good thing. I was really proud of Dan Jensen, our auditor, which, I mean, daily he keeps us afloat. He was asked to present on Iron County financial response to COVID-19. It was really interesting to talk with other commissioners after Dan's presentation they were all, they all just, I think the consensus was that they all needed Dan. Sounds like they've all got great auditors and they're moving forward, but it was kind of really cool to sit back and have Dan say, well, we did this and we addressed this from the very beginning, and the commissioners were on board with this, and we discussed this, and it all worked out in the end. It was just really impressive, and really, really proud of Dan and grateful for Dan to work with him every day. I've got working on some fire issues out in the West Desert, Burl and Newcastle, Hamlin Valley. We've got some challenges out there with our fire departments that we've kind of started some discussions on how to address that in the future with equipment, responses, being able to staff those fire departments. We met the other day and talked about some things. It's going to be an ongoing. It's not an easy fix. It's going to be an ongoing thing, but that's something that we're starting the conversation to try and see what our best options are to maintain fire protection in that area of the county. Those have been my biggies this week.
Okay, thank you.
That stands for Utah Association of County Commissions and Councils.
Excellent.
I'll ditto everything Mike said. We had a great conference, and those conferences are really good, but sometimes the most valuable part is when you have breaks and time to visit with other commissioners, get ideas and things they're doing, and it's really, really productive. And like Mike said, Dan's a rock star. He's amazing with what he does. We appreciate him very much. I just wanted to report. I had a letter sent. We sent a letter to the state, to Governor Herbert, requesting to go green a couple of weeks ago. They responded a week after I reviewed that letter. This is the second letter we've got. And I'll just read it for the record. It was written to Dr. Blodgett, Southwest Utah Public Health Department. Dear Dr. Blodgett, thank you for your leadership in guiding Washington and Iron County's efforts to combat the COVID-19 pandemic and for your support of Governor Herbert's Utah Leads Together plan. The Utah Department of Health received your request for exemption per the newly adopted Utah Public Health Order 2020-13, requesting Washington and Iron counties enter the green phase. Though in previous conversations I conveyed the governor's approval of these requests, due to the recent statewide surge in COVID-19 cases, we will need to delay this approval. The United Command recently updated the key criteria used when considering whether to ease or tighten public health restriction levels in geographic areas throughout the state. The new criteria for easing restrictions to green requires 1, the daily case count to be less than 10 new daily cases per 100,000 population on an average over the most recent 14 days, and 2, the percent positivity average to be less than 5% over 7 days. Currently, Washington and Iron counties have daily case counts per 100,000 of 10.44 and 5.14 respectively, and percent positivity averages of 10.34% and 5.39% respectively. We're keeping a close watch on the data for all counties. Should Washington and Iron data move within these parameters, let's discuss this request again. Please let me know if you have any questions or require any additional information. And I honestly was a little upset when we received this letter. They just seem to continue to move the goalposts on this COVID stuff. And I called Richard Saunders, who wrote this letter. He's the interim executive director for the Utah Department of Health, and visited with him. My biggest concern is for our restaurants. They continue to have the 6-foot requirement between guests, which limits some of our restaurants 50% capacity or less. And if you're a waitress or a waiter trying to make a living on tips with the reduced patrons, customers in those restaurants, and not to mention the owners trying to make a living, it's very difficult. And so I called Mr. Saunders and visited with him. He brought up they had a meeting that morning, and there's some new guidelines with restaurants, which is good news. This is just brand new. He said a restaurant can allow groups to be closer than 6 feet while seated if they can meet all of the following guidelines. If the restaurant is in a county where the average daily number of new cases of COVID-19 over a 14-day period is 17 cases or less for every 100,000 people, and I believe we're in that metric right now, the restaurant owners must take the stay safe to stay open pledge, some kind of pledge they have. Customers are required to wear a mask unless they are actively eating or drinking. Music must be at or below 50 decibels. I asked him what that was all about. I guess if the music's high, they think people are going to talk louder and whatever. Tables that are distanced from each other are all filled before seating groups at tables that are closer than 6 feet, which makes sense. So that's the new guideline, which is good news for our restaurants. I think a lot of them have already gone back to normal in our county. But for those that, I think Chris McCormick with our chamber is going to be here today, and so we need to get this word out to them, that they can, I think, start looking at going back to normal and make a living. So I'm trying to think of anything else we have, but I think that's all I have right now. So if there's nothing else, we'll take a break until 10 o'clock. Thank you. You okay with that? Mike, you okay with that? If we move Chris McCormick up?
Oh, sure. Oops.
You ready, John?
Uh-huh.
Good morning, everyone that's joined us. We appreciate your attendance at our County Commission meeting this morning, this Monday, the 28th day of September, 2020, and it's 10:04 a.m. and we'll carry on with our meeting today. We'll move to agenda item number 1, or actually, yes, and this is discussion and possible approval for a proposed zone change. Actually, let me stop there. We talked about, before we get into that, is that your, let's see. Yeah, that's you, Reed. So let's go ahead. We have Chris McCormick here with our chamber. And we're gonna actually move, Chris, rather than have you sit through all that other stuff, we know you're busy. We're gonna go ahead and move you up. We'll move agenda item number 7 up to just before item number 1. We'll just go ahead and go to you now, and then you can present what you have, and then that way we won't keep you so long. We've got some items that's going to take a while. So
You're gonna stir up some trouble, are we?
Maybe.
Well, that's great. All right. Well, I'm Chris McCormick with the Cedar City Area Chamber of Commerce, and during COVID, a lot of people really stepped up, and I say during, even though it's still going on in some places, not in my mind. But anyway, we polled a number of people to say, who really made a difference during COVID. And there's been a number of people that really stepped up and have made a significant difference during COVID. So I've got a couple of different awards here that I want to present. And one of them is to the Iron County Commission, to all 3 of you. And it's for all you've done to keep people informed, keep things going, and also to take this CARES Act money. You took a huge chunk of CARES Act money and allocated it for businesses, and that money's going out on a regular basis. So I commend all 3 of you for your efforts in that, and thank you. And so I'm going to ask the 3 of you to stand up and accept this award, and if you don't mind me taking a photo. Thank you. And then I have another one. Is Dan Jensen?
That's got COVID.
Yeah,
Is Dan Jensen not coming?
he's across the hall. I bet he'll be here momentarily.
Okay, I'll hold off on his then for just a second. Then we also, and I talked to Paul about this. He was very uncomfortable about this, but we have one specifically for Paul Cousins. And the reason is that Paul spent countless hours working with me directly for a lot of time. We spent a ton of time on the phone together working on different things. But he also made a significant contribution from his own personal pocket to help businesses in our community. I won't disclose the amount, but a significant sum of money out of his own personal pocket to help our local restaurants during COVID. So I really want to thank you for doing that. I know you don't like this, but we're going to do this anyway. So thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dan just walked in.
Oh, good. Good. And then recently, Dan Jensen has spent countless hours, I don't know how many, on the telephone talking to people, but he's been administering the CARES Act funding, grant funding that you guys allocated for our businesses. And I know for a fact that he's spent a lot of hours on the telephone and internet and whatever else putting this together, plus the meetings he holds with our committee. to do this. So we'd like to present this to Dan Jensen as another recipient of the COVID Hero Award. So it's pretty cool, in my opinion, that 3 out of the 15 awards came to people here, right here in our county government. So, Dan, you want to come up and accept this?
Well, and just a note with Dan, he's had his, we're right in the middle of budget season too, and he's administering those grants and doing his regular job, so he's
you can
been
stand up
burning the
there.
candle.
That's awesome.
Both ends.
And not to mention as well that the grant program was Dan's brainchild. If it weren't for Dan and this idea, we wouldn't have the grant program. It was he dreamed it up, administered it, and he's the man.
So this is why I've been so flaky lately. I've been juggling. I've only been keeping the bigger balls up in the air. The little ones are falling on the ground. So
Well, that's all right. I'll stand behind you, pick them up. There's dollars attached to them. Anyway, I really just want to say thank you to all of you who have really stepped up during COVID and made a big difference. So I think you guys all deserve a big round of applause, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Chris, and we appreciate you. You do an amazing job with the chamber. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll now go to agenda item number 1, discussion and possible approval for a proposed zone change from rural agriculture 20, RA 20 to agricultural 20, A20, located approximately 8100 West, 2000 South, Cedar City, Utah, 84720, 156.34 acres, located within the southeast quarter section 29, Township 36 South, Range 12 West, Salt Lake Basin, and Meridian. Did I say that right, John?
Yeah, you just need to also declare the public hearing.
And okay,
Oh,
Iron
sorry.
County,
Yeah.
Iron County, Utah, APNs E-231-22, E-233, E-231, E-233-1, E-231-23, E-232-2, E-233-3. Applicant Red Mesa Properties LLC, and this is presented by Reed Erickson. Do we want to open the public hearing now, or wait till you present it?
presentation
and then
and
we'll
then
open
you
up?
can
Okay.
open the public hearing. Morning, Commissioners. Bringing to you a request for zone change that has been recommended by the Planning Commission. They held a hearing and took action at their last meeting, recommending that this be rezoned from rural agricultural 20 to agricultural 20. This is the property, most of you are familiar with this 160 acres approximately that was the Jim Peevler property out west of 7700 West. I'll just go through a brief presentation. You can see by the star here where the property is located, just south of Highway 56 and west of Quichpaw Lake. When we zoom in just a little bit here, this is a zoning map of the area showing the Tier 2 boundary. The pink is the RA20, and the buff color to the south of it is the A20. As we zoom in here, you can see a little closer. There's a number of parcels here. There's the 6 parcels, but it's all just one property, managed as one property and being used as a single property. It was included in the recent zone change, actually in 2015. Prior to that, it was to be RA20. Prior to that, it was agricultural 20. And you can see that it was included with these other properties that were all rezoned to RA20 in 2015. An aerial of the property showing outlined in yellow. You can see the cluster of homes and buildings up in the upper left corner there, and the rest of the property is vacant. Currently, there are 2, don't show on here, maybe with my cursor I can show you up on these 2 parcels. There's 2 20-acre parcels up in this upper right corner that have conservation easements on them for prairie dogs, held by the Panorama Land RC&D, and was done through the Habitat Credit Exchange Program. And so those have been managed that way for, quite a period of years. Here's just another larger aerial showing the proximity to other properties in the area and what the road infrastructure is around there. Just a more detailed legal description and the survey of the property showing that there is frontage that comes off of the east side of the property for 7700 West, and then this little piece on the west side, and for the road width is what takes it down to 156 acres, which otherwise would be 160 acres from Aliquot Parts. It's just a brief summary of how services are obtained for the property currently. The property has, as you saw by the zoning map, other RA20 adjacent to it, as well as R5 on the north and A20 on the south, and the bottom southwest and southeast sides. Water is not available publicly there. It's a private water system on the property, and would have to be developed to whatever the need is there for the possible uses of the property. It is on septic. There's no considerations for annexation because it's outside of the Tier 2 into a Tier 4 area. And so the improvements and the infrastructure would have to be provided by the applicant. And feasibility has been done. They've contacted the Water Conservancy District and other service providers in the area for the possibility of doing that. And those possibilities are still being explored in terms of other infrastructure opportunities there. Water Conservancy District currently serves, you can see this area down in the bottom there. In the yellow, right at the bottom of the screen, is the Sunset subdivision that is on Water Conservancy District water. And so it's a little ways up to that, but they're still looking at the possibility of trying to tie on to the Water Conservancy District as well.
So Reed, can they get fire flow without hooking on to the Central Iron County?
There's a couple of ways to provide that, and those would be discussed with the fire department, and I have had conversation with Ryan Riddle as well as the applicant in terms of trying to identify what the requirements would be for fire suppression, whether fire flow is a requirement or whether availability from the pond with a dry hydrant and or other fire suppression in the buildings as required by fire code could be provided, similar to what was provided with the Academy, Monuments Academy up Dry Lakes. Would be a similar situation with about similar sized property and similar uses that were intended. The reason for this zone change is because currently in the RA20 zone, a rehabilitation treatment facility is not an allowed use. It's a conditional use in the A20 zone. And so their desire is to rezone the property to A20 so that it's eligible to apply for a rehabilitation treatment facility. A rehabilitation treatment facility is similar to, is the same as what we permitted for the Monument Academy property up Dry Lakes. And the difference in a rehabilitation treatment facility and a residential facility for persons with disability is simply the scale and the size of the operation. They may provide similar services, but the larger that it gets, the less likely it is to fit the definition and the character of a residential facility for persons with disability because of its limitations and in being in a residence only. And so what we've done in the county is we've tried to direct, and we have been successful in the last couple of applications in doing that, is that when a rehabilitation treatment facility or a residential facility for persons with disabilities grows beyond what might be considered a residential facility for persons with disability, which we've held around 16 people, then it really falls into more of a business category and what we would as defined in our ordinance, classify as a residential or a rehabilitation treatment facility. And that's what we've directed these guys in terms of trying to say, if that's really what it's going to be, then it really needs to be a conditional use for a rehabilitation treatment facility. We've been operating the Discovery Ranch facility has been operating under a reasonable accommodation for a residential facility for persons with disability, which we normally keep to 16. That was done prior to us really establishing that differentiation in our ordinances and by practice and licensing and permitting through land use. Discovery Ranch now wants to add another building to their facility, and they have submitted a conditional use permit for a rehabilitation treatment facility because they also recognize that it's beyond the scope of really what a reasonable accommodation would provide in a residential facility for persons with disability. So that will be on the agenda for the next Planning Commission meeting, is for the Planning Commission to consider a conditional use permit for Discovery Ranch to go from a residential facility for persons with disability operating on a reasonable accommodation to a licensed rehabilitation treatment facility. And they recognize that that's better for them in their licensing with the state as well as for operating in the future and doing what they want to do.
So Reed, does the 16 persons have to do with like total people there, or
that's the
guests?
residents.
Okay.
That's how many people they can have living at the facility.
So if employees come
Or
in, that's
employees
not part
would be
of
in
the,
addition to them.
And they have that 16 now.
And they have,
right?
it was 6 or 9 months ago, they applied for a reasonable accommodation to have up to 16 people in that facility. And so they've been licensed that way. I don't think they've been operating at that level, but they've had the ability to do that since last year sometime. So that's the nature of this request. I wanted to just run through a few photos here to show you what the property is. Most of you are probably familiar with the property. These are the facilities, the barn and what they call the bunkhouse that has, rooms in it that could be used and what they would use. The challenge with a zone change when we are evaluating that outside of the scope of the specific project is that we're looking at the zone and what could occur in that zone, right? We're not doing it specific to a project, even though the applicant has expressed their interest in what the project would be. It also considers the other uses that are allowed in the A20 zone, which because a zone can, in a property zoned a particular way, can occur all of the uses that are in that zone. We want to consider what the impact would be with any of those uses, not just this particular use. But that's why the applicant has applied. They've made that known. They're not trying to hide that. And so it's an evaluation of whether or not the best interest of the public can be served by the zoning request. And as you're aware, the zoning is a legislative decision. There's not specific criteria for qualifying for a zone change. Legislatively, the standard is that it could promote the general welfare that is determined by the legislative body with a recommendation from the Planning Commission. And so it's everything weighs in, the impacts, how the neighbors feel, how you feel like the future use in the area is. It's legislative, which means you have the most discretion of all land use decisions in a legislative decision. And a zone change is one of those decisions. I wanted to just, before I come back to the public hearing section, I wanted to just remind you of the list of considerations. And so even though this is not criteria, it is what we call evaluation considerations for rezoning property. And those are the things that we look at from the level of feasibility. We try to determine whether it's feasible that if the property were rezoned, whether the services could be provided, whether things are there and they could be provided. It doesn't make a lot of sense to rezone property if they're seeking for a zone that is just not feasible to have the kind of services necessary to serve that area. In the Planning Commission and staff's evaluation, they determined that feasibility exists for providing all of this infrastructure need for the level of an A20 use, and felt like that it would be appropriate and part of the reason for the recommendation to go ahead and rezone the property. Are there any specific questions, or I'll just leave this page open and you can have public hearing?
Okay. Thank you, Reed. We'll go ahead and declare a public hearing open at this time on this matter. Any comments?
My name is William Pressgrove. I'm just one of the individuals that lives in that area. I don't have a problem with the facility being located there. My problem is the precedent that is being set by when the previous owner says, no, I have no problem being RA 20, and then we get a new owner and the new owner says, hey, I don't like RA 20, I want an A20. That sets a dangerous precedent, because that says that anybody that comes in and buys a piece of property can then apply for a zone change to their property to fit what they want to do with the property, versus checking that out before they buy the property to make sure that they can do what they want to do on the piece of property they buy. The other thing is, it was mentioned that they only have a certain number of acre feet of water for that piece of property. Expanding facilities on that property means that you have to get more water. And right now we've had several individuals that live in that area that have had to drill new wells to get down to the water. And if we add more facilities with more wells, then it's going to draw that much more on the water. And one of my neighbors says he would like to see a moratorium put on until we can verify that there is enough water to support X number of more wells in the area, which I think would be a valid reason for not changing the zoning, but for any more facilities or things that are going to be drawing on the water out there. One of the biggest problems right now is we have 5 wells that the city draws water, and after they put those wells in, that's when all of these individuals had to start drilling the new wells, deeper wells, because the city's drawn more water off than was available for the people that live there. So that I would suggest that you look into a moratorium on water, or on facilities being built until such time as we can verify that we have the water sufficient to supply water for all of these new areas. Like I said, my biggest concern is the precedent that is being set by changing the like you said, in 2015 there was a big rigmarole about changing that area from A20 to RA20, and things weren't quite done according to Hoyle when that was done, because they proposed RA20 with certain wording. They sent out the notification to all of the people. They got back no, answers no, and then they changed the wording on the proposal. They did not send out notification that that people's previous responses were not going to be accepted with the new wording, and so the zoning commission acted on having no response to the new wording for the RA20, and went ahead and put it into effect, even though there were some people that came up physically and verbally expressed their objections to the change. So that kind of thing is not quite kosher. The other thing is, you got tier 1, you got tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 as supposed to be what governs the zoning in the county. But if you'll look at the zoning map, it's like, yeah, you got the bullseye right here, tier 1, that's a commercial area, and that's right downtown Cedar City type, in that area around it. But then outside of that, it looks like somebody just threw a bunch of darts, with numbers on them, A1 or RA1, RA1 half, for the zones around there, and you have a patchwork of zones around the entire area. It does not really follow a tier proposal or a tier description of the zones. And what we're doing here is we're just taking a little patch off of the patchwork quilt and changing it from one patchwork, one quilt to another. So I have no problem with the zone being changed, but these other issues have to be addressed in order to get rid of the patchwork quilt type zoning that we have in this county. And that's my input.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close this public hearing. And is there any discussion amongst the commission on this issue?
No.
I would like to say a couple things in regards to the water. If I do know that, and it kind of as a side note, I know that the Central Iron County Water Conservancy District has, I think they signed. If not, I think the city council approved. There's that water line that comes down through that area from the Quichapa Canyon spring. And I think they've signed an agreement with Cedar City, or they are going to sign an agreement for emergency use. So if they ever have a well go down, Cedar City would provide them emergency water in that case until they got their well fixed. The other point is, if this organization was to expand their operation and they needed more water, if they did connect with the Central Iron County Water Conservancy District, they would have to bring more water rights. Either give their water to them or bring more to the table if they were expanding and deemed that they needed more water rights for their usage. So I attended the planning commission. There was a lot of back and forth in that planning commission. I thought it was well debated. Reed, I think it was well presented, and Mr. Hoffling was the one that was mainly presenting in that meeting, and there was a lot of negative comments about this girl's home, and I thought he made a good point. Someone has to care for these girls. They have some issues. They're under constant supervision by adults, but they're good girls. They need help, and this is an organization that helps them. And we need places that can do that. And so I felt good about the discussion we had. Didn't the planning commission give a favorable recommendation, Reed? So I just wanted to point that out.
Did you have a comment, Mike? Are you gonna?
No.
Oh, you're gonna make the motion.
If we're ready for a motion.
I just have one comment then. Or question, Reed. I know in the past sometimes when we've done these, people felt like it was presented as a home for girls or boys, of minimum risk, and then the neighbors feel like, well, then they'll be back in a year. or they'll be dishonest and sneak. And I'm not accusing anybody of doing that, but they'll bring people in that, you know, or maybe have been abusive or, you know, had some kind of, be people that would be dangerous, potentially dangerous to the public. How do we cover that to make sure the neighbors are okay?
That's a good question, and I think the best answer that I could propose is that is done through state licensing. The state licenses these facilities based on the type of children that they allow. So for the type of child that they're proposing to have now, they can obtain a certain kind of license. But they would need a different license to operate under the state if they were to take court-adjudicated youth or other type. And so that would be, you know, through the state licensing division more than, you know, what we would do. And they are the ones that inspect and license in terms of the number of supervision people that they have on staff at all times, type of program that they have. And they have a number of different levels and types of programs, and those are all licensed through the state. So we really don't know or don't have any control or say in that regard. And, you know, there could be, that could occur in a residential facility for persons with disability with 4 people there, you know, in a residential neighborhood in the middle of Parowan Town or Cedar City or anywhere. And so I say in many respects, if this isn't as good a place in the county to put them, generally speaking, then where is the better place? You know, it has good services available, good roads, good access, good facility, lot of property, enough to spread out on their property and provide what they need on the property without as many close neighbors as having in more dense residential areas. And so I think it's a good blend between, similar to what we have with Discovery Ranch out on Three Peaks Road. You know, it's turned out to be a good facility, and all the neighbors, you know, had that concern in the beginning and expressed those same frustrations. And as we've had expressed throughout the county whenever one of these is considered. And we just haven't seen that kind of problem once they've gone in and once they've operated. You know, the fear and the expectation is always worse than the reality in most cases, and we just haven't seen that's panned out.
Didn't they say they had 3 adults per?
4.
Was it 4?
They have 1 adult, yeah.
Not all
at
at
any
the
one
same
time,
time.
they have 1 adult per 4 students or youth, but then their total employment role is 3 per
3 to
1,
yes,
based on the number of counselors and the horse people and the, you know, caretakers and everybody else that's there. So they have a lot of supervision, a lot of people coming in working with the kids, and so they're watched and monitored closely.
Wasn't it brought out too? Sorry, Elma. I just wanted to bring something up while I thought about it. But I think they brought up the fact that with it currently zoned as it is, they could build that out far greater than what they plan to do now. So when you talk about water usage and some of the other infrastructure needs, it's going to be a lot less impactful.
Yeah, in terms of 160 acres with 6 parcels,
Right.
you know, the number of homes that they could put on if they were to just develop as a residential development, it would have a heavier impact on the water and in the area in terms of traffic and everything than what this one facility would have based on their numbers. That was what was discussed at the Planning
Okay.
Commission meeting.
Excuse me. Thanks for the explanation.
May I also just respond a little bit to what Bill mentioned, which is a frustration over the zoning patterns throughout the county, and we share in that same frustration. We wish we could go back to 1960, 1970, before there was any zoning and all of these subdivisions were developed, and people exercised their property rights to be able to come in and subdivide their property. It would be nice to be able to go back and say, we're going to develop a tiering system in 1970 instead of in 1995. after everything had already been zoned and all the properties had been subdivided out in the rural incorporated areas. Then we would have more of a pattern that we've been able to develop as a result of the tiering system, with Tier 1 and Tier 2 being our growth areas, with the municipalities as Tier 1 and their growth areas as Tier 2, which is now where we see all, because of the rules that we've had in place since 1995, we haven't approved a subdivision outside of Tier 2 that is less than 20-acre lot sizes since 1995. We've had a lot of desires for those and had to tell them no because of the tiering system. It's hard to come back, and I share in Bill's frustration, to come in after the fact and try to develop a land use management system for things that occurred prior to that. Escalante Valley, we would love to go back and fix that situation, you know, and not have so many small lot subdivisions out there that have no roads even to them, let alone any kind of water development or any infrastructure of any kind. And it's frustrating for landowners who buy a parcel on a tax sale from, you know, Texas and expect to be able to come and do something on a property that they can't even find because it has no roads to it. And it's a half-acre lot, you know, out in the middle of nowhere. And we wish we could go back and fix those things. And so I think to say, you know, that a property owner doesn't have a right to come in and request a rezone on their property because they acquired it and it should always stay what it was, I think is a denial of property right and an interest in someone who wants to try to do something with their property just because it wasn't previously zoned that. And we respect that and try to have that fit within the system, and how we have a process that can be done. And, you know, I hope that we can preserve that for the future so that people have options to try to do things with property beyond what it's currently zoned. Yeah. As infrastructure becomes available and as other options come and we get roads paved to certain areas, and things can change and we'll grow, and we expect that those changes will occur.
Yeah.
So
I don't think we could
I
ever
express
slam
that frustration. I sympathize with it. I'm glad we have the tools that we have currently and hope that we can use those to help people be able to take opportunity and take advantage of their property rights.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let me ask you this: in the motion, do we need to reread all of the? Do we need to reread everything, or has that already been put on the record when you read it the first time?
I would think it's on the record, isn't it, John? Are we good? Or
I think you're okay.
Okay.
It wouldn't hurt to read it, but I think you're okay. Yeah.
We know what we're talking about.
Exactly.
The horse is dead.
Move to approve proposed zone change from rural agricultural 20, RA 20 to agricultural 20, A20 located at 8100 West, 200 South in Cedar City, Utah, 84720, with the legal description of that property already read into the record.
That's just a correction. That's 2,000, not 200.
Oh, excuse me.
Right.
8100 West, 2000 South.
Second. Second.
It's been moved and seconded as described. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 2, ordinance 2020-3, County Code Amendment, Cedar City Airport Overlay Section 17.58.050, compatible land use regulations, provisions regarding land uses in the approach zone and the instrument approach zone, specifically near their north end.
This is something that the Planning Commission has been discussing and has had on their agenda probably for the last 6 or 8 months in trying to determine appropriate changes to the airport overlay. These came out of a frustration of the land use requirements on this matrix that you can see. This is the airport overlay, and as I zoom in just a little bit more on that, you can see that there is, in the land use compatibility guidelines for this airport overlay that was done in in 2001 is when this was adopted and has been in place since that time, that the way that the FAA described and looked at the appropriate designations of land uses around the airport fell into these 5 categories. From left to right, you have the airport influence zone, which is the bigger zone, the gray zone. That's the area that's around that. Then you have the airport, the traffic pattern zone, which is that green zone, which covers a larger area. And then the blue, light blue, is what's called the approach zone. The yellow that goes through and underneath that dark yellow, dark blue, is the instrument approach zone. And then the red inside of that and the yellow inside of that is the runway protection zone. And you can see that as you move from the larger area down closer to the airport in the center and the runway protection zone, the land uses become more restrictive, specifically for residential, which is the first line there. So you see that it's permitted in the traffic pattern zone and the airport influence zone, but then in the approach zone and the instrument approach zone and the runway protection zone, residential is not allowed, with the exception that with the asterisk there, you'll see it takes you to the bottom where it says land within the approach zone, which is north of 3000 north and or east of Northfield Road, may have residential uses as long as they are no more dense than 1 dwelling per 5 acres. This does not apply to areas within the instrument approach zone. So what that essentially meant is that on this map, everything that was outside of north of 3000 north, let's go to this where you can see here. The 3000 north is this line right here. That's 3000 north. And so for the last 20 years, no residential has been allowed north of 3000 north within the instrument approach zone, and residential has only been allowed at 1 per 5 acres in the approach zone north of 3000 north, which is this area and this area right here. So those are the areas that were being targeted in this change to consider whether that was too restrictive based on the new FAA guidelines and the things that are in the FAA recommendations for appropriate land uses. We evaluated a number of those as we looked through the Planning Commission recommendations and the considerations for what appropriate land uses would be in that area without being too complacent in terms of trying to address conflicts and incompatibilities around the airport. The concern is the airport is very important, and we don't want to allow land uses around the airport that would cause conflicts in the future that would make the airport go away or restrict the airport's current use. I had when I was looking at some of this information, I saw that since 2015, FAA has reported over 300 airports in the United States that have been closed as a result of incompatible land uses, which primarily come from uses that are allowed that then complain about either noise or safety or impacts to those properties as they encroach around the airport. And so what FAA does is they leave the local decision makers give that, recognizing that that's a local decision to determine what appropriate land uses are to the extent that they feel that the airport needs to be protected. With the guidelines that we've evaluated and used in trying to determine what those appropriate uses are. They've provided a number of matrix and different ways to evaluate in terms of sound and noise and safety and different impacts related to wildlife and waterfowl and electrical interference and all of the things that are related to that. So I consulted with Cedar City when we started this evaluation in determining what appropriate land uses would be if they could be changed, and felt like out on this north end specifically is the area of greatest concern because of the what we have determined to be overregulation based on the way that the land uses have changed since 2000 for the FAA. The regulations and how they look at their inner safety zone and outer safety zone, which they didn't have in 2001 and now currently have in place, and prescribe appropriate land uses. So we determined that this is the new draft ordinance, and you have a copy of it. It primarily relates to this language right here. So our recommendation would be that the airport overlay be changed to allow residential on the north side of 3000, on the sides where it's the approach zone, where it was allowed previously at 1 per 5 acres, to now allow it at 1 per 1/2 acre, and within the instrument approach zone to allow it at 1 per acre rather than no residential. And those immediate properties immediately to the south of 3000 that are within, as described here, 750 feet of 3000 north would be allowed to have 1 residential per 5 acres or existing legal lots as they currently exist, legal lots of record within that buffer area. And that essentially would look like this. It would allow the areas here to go to 1/2 acre density, here to 1 acre density, and here to 1/2 acre density.
Or residential.
1/2 acre density for residential, yes.
These areas all in the county? Not in
Yes, these are all the areas that are in the county only. The areas, you can see the white buffered line. Let me go back here. You can see this white line right here, white dashed line. That's the Cedar City annexation line. Okay, so the properties that we're talking about are in the unincorporated area. This property, for instance, right here is in the city. This is in the, some of this is in the city, and most of this all is in the city here, with the exception of this piece right here and this piece. So we're only dealing with this, and that was part of our discussion with Cedar City, is that they requested that we not redo the airport overlay zoning designations as they exist. In other words, the instrument approach zone, the approach zone, and not go to what the FAA now uses as the outer safety zone, the inner safety zone. They have little different designations. They're more concerned at this width, this full width out here to this distance, and then only the instrument approach zone out to 10,000 feet. They're less concerned about these areas now. But Cedar City was concerned that we, don't turn the whole apple cart upside down and try to redo the whole, the overlay, because it's still important in some respects of, as what this ordinance requires, is that we get avigation easements when somebody builds in those areas. But at least now we would allow building in those areas.
The avocation easement would forevermore keep them from complaining?
Certainly not. I mean, people can still complain, but
Well, okay,
they're at least
suing.
on notice.
Suing, I know
Yeah,
that.
they're at least on notice, and they recognize and accept the current condition. And so then if they were to sue or that they did complain, there would be a recourse that says, look, you were aware, we put this in place, we tried to put it on notice. There are also requirements in that with the avigation notice that it has to build, for instance, within 25 decibel attenuation for sound, so that they put more insulated windows, glass, insulation, so that the building is built so that it's quieter inside. There are things like that that are in place that would, carry forward with this.
You talk about the number of airports that have been closed down because of complaints and lawsuits and so on. So I
Right.
guess I'm a little bit baffled as to why we're letting people build in those areas, even though, you know, 'cause that would be catastrophic to have our airport shut
Yeah,
down. And I
it
know it's
would.
happened. In big airports, it's happened because
I know, it does.
of complaints from sound and.
The reason for this is because this is a long ways down from the end of the runway, and the current regulations now propose that inner safety zone where no residential occur be at 6,000 feet, which is where this other line is right here. That's that, and this would still say no or minimal residential, but then this is what they call that outer safety zone, which doesn't have the same restriction for residential. They still want minimal residential, and that's what we're trying to do, is we're saying still minimal residential. We're not doing high density residential. The general plan for the city identifies that area as 8 units per acre. You know, we're saying no, that's still, you know, not, even though the airport overlay restricts that, and we have the same airport overlay that the city adopted and the county adopted back in 2001. So, you know, there was some question as to, well, then why didn't we rezone those parcels back when we did the overlay? Well, we essentially did. An overlay is a zoning. It's an overlay zone that has a new set of rules that applies to a number of different zones, base zones. You know, so this new level of rules is spread across a lot of different zones. What we've found in the past 20 years of implementing this is that sometimes that's a little difficult to enforce and apply because not everybody remembers, because that overlay zone doesn't show up on the zoning maps like the base zone. So when somebody gets a real estate appraisal or gets something that says there's a property is zoned R5, then they assume that they can do residential 5 acre, even though there's now an overlay that also restricts the ability to do it. So it puts it in conflict, okay? So we're not here proposing, we have discussed at the Planning Commission to propose rezones, but this is not what this does currently. And we will continue to evaluate that and determine whether the Planning Commission wants to make a recommendation on rezoning some of those properties that are in conflict. Because right now, for instance, we have a property that's zoned R5, but can't have residential, but it also can't have some of the other things that would be allowed in the airport overlay, like light industrial or commercial, but because the property is zoned R5, they really don't have a lot of uses. They don't have very many options at all. So we've said, well, maybe we ought to rezone some of those properties that can't have residential to commercial or light industrial so that they can have uses that they currently don't have.
So I read the minutes. I went back and read the minutes from 20 years ago. I read every planning commission minute, every comment, and the county commission. And I know that Commissioner Bullock, Lois Bullock at the time, it seems like in their final vote, she said that even though they approved the overlay back then, they didn't rezone because there was so much opposition to some zone changes. So if we vote on this today, I have some major concerns.
Yeah, it's
as
not
you know.
rezoning anything.
But you just said that. You just said that when you approve the overlay, it does rezone. You just said that.
Well, it creates a new zone, the overlay zone. It creates a new set
Doesn't
of
rezone the
regulation,
properties.
but it doesn't rezone the property. No, but it is in effect a zoning, because it's a zoning designation of regulations that you're overlaying on top of the other regulations. that
Or
are
it
there.
says remain no residential, that area right there, so has that been zoned so people cannot build there at all then? Or did you, because
The
obviously.
overlay prohibits building a residential there and has since 2001.
But there
But
are
there are
obviously homes
zones,
there.
properties zoned for residential there, but they're not allowed residential because of the zoning overlay district, the airport overlay.
So some of these properties have been built since that 2000 meeting, right? From 20 years ago. right?
Where are we talking?
Like down on the right-hand
Farm.
side.
Yeah, that like along here, this residential area right here.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm not sure exact, this is commercial units, these are not, these are residential and with part of that subdivision. And I don't know when exactly that occurred.
That's Northfield, and that's in Cedar City.
Yeah, it's in Cedar City town.
This is just very confusing to me because obviously we've let people build since that vote in these areas. And
There's
so
only
I want to make
one
sure
that I'm aware of, right here on this property. That's the only one that I'm aware of.
now, where's Jim's property? The one on
It's
Dog
it's
Road.
right down.
What was his last name?
It's right here. That's currently zoned R5.
Okay. And this
And
vote today would fix Jim's problem.
it would allow him to build on that residential because now we're saying that this would allow residential on existing legal lots of record in that area. South of 3,000 within 750 feet
'Cause I-
and north of 3,000.
Because I really feel bad about the
Because-
runaround he's got.
Because that's those are the kind of problems that we've run into, over the years with existing lots, and now we're trying to fix that and say we feel like that we can lighten that ordinance by allowing those in that area without adversely impacting the airport.
My concern too is from reading the minutes from 20 years ago, there was a list of names on there, but there was no receipts, like certified mail receipts that all the property owners were notified that this was going to happen to their property.
We've never done certified mail receipts on any zoning. We've always just done first-class mail, send them notices.
Okay. Okay, but I'm just concerned that people know that they're aware that their property, there could be kind of a taking or a restriction on what they can do with their property without knowing about it. That's all. With some of these things.
We're not doing that by this ordinance. This ordinance will lighten or allow more uses than what there is currently.
Okay.
This allows people to do more than what the previous ordinance allowed.
Well, and you say it's not a zone change, but 5-acre lot, 2 1/2-acre lot.
We're not rezoning those. That would be, if they wanted to come in and rezone their property from R5 to R1/2, they could do that.
It would take a zone
But they
change.
can
Would have
do,
to petition
they
for
can,
that.
yeah, they can rezone that, or we could do that. We could initiate that kind of a zone change if we wanted. But what it does is it allows them to use their property for what it's currently zoned. We could just say, 1 per 5 acres if we wanted, but we felt like there's no real reason to have that kind of density restriction in that area. And so even though the property is zoned R1, R5, they can rezone it to R1 or R2 or R1/2 as long as the airport overlay allows for that,
So your statement that we don't have to have that is basically saying that just that middle section where the planes would come right over the top of your residence is where the problems are.
That's where most accidents occur and the noise is the loudest is right over in that instrument approach zone out to 6,000, out to 10,000 feet. Inside of that, on those sides, is not as necessary to have that same level of restriction density of 1 per 5 acres. It could be less than that.
So Reed, on the, I know that in some areas there is an avigation easement that's required.
The avigation easement would be required in everything in the instrument or the approach zone. This whole area.
Okay.
Everything within the instrument approach zone or approach zone would require an avigation easement.
And explain that again, what that entails.
It's like an easement that you would grant on your property for somebody to put a pipeline under the ground. They cross your property with that pipeline, and you recognize that pipeline's there, and you won't do anything to interfere with the use of that pipeline. They sign an avigation easement saying that they recognize that this airspace above them is used more significantly than any other area, and that they are then on notice that there are planes flying over them and things could fall on them, and that it's noisier, and that they recognize that, and that they will build to a 25 decibel they will attenuate their building to a 25
What
decibel.
triggers that easement when they get a building permit?
Uh-huh.
You have them sign it then?
Or subdivision,
Okay.
yeah. Well, a new subdivision would require, one would be right on the plat, and then a building permit would
Wouldn't it
require.
make sense in that process to have them sign something that says, look, you're building?
The easement says that. They
Is that- and
they
is it-
release the city of any harm and
Is it-
recognize that they're within that instrument or
Is-
approach.
Is that recorded with their deed? So when they sell, those people that buy agree to the same
It is
conditions?
recorded, yeah.
Okay.
It's given to the city, Cedar City. They hold the easement, and that it's recorded with the property.
But to Alma's concern earlier, that does help protect the viability of the airport moving forward. If something were to happen or they want to complain, it's like, well, that's fine, but you are subject to this navigation easement.
Correct.
Right.
It's like building next to the landfill. Oh, it stinks, but
Yeah.
right.
Well, and we have the
It's
same
a,
ordinance.
it's a problem. It
Protect
happens with
agriculture.
feedlots and with gravel pits and with all kinds of things that people move next to, and it coming to the nuisance. And there's a lot of case law in the courts on coming to the nuisance, on how much rights they have and how many people get there and what happens. And sometimes the operator can continue to operate, but sometimes it becomes so difficult for them because of all of the complaints that it's easier to move. And that's often what happens.
Go ahead.
And and some of those things, all those things you mentioned are smaller than a regional airport.
Less significant than an
And
airport.
so
or
I just,
community.
I'm a private property rights guy, totally, but I would hate to do something that put the future of the Cedar City Airport in peril, because I know I've heard of it. I mean, big airports, and people just got louder and louder and louder than the airplanes, and they got it shut down. I mean, and think of the millions of dollars that are, and then you'd have to drive further. Who knows where we'd put the new Cedar Airport if we had to move it, but. So that's my biggest concern.
And that's our concern too, as we evaluated that and say, how far can we go and still allow those uses to occur on those lots that are there, and that we feel, would still allow them as much use of the property without being detrimental to the future of the airport.
So
Like this is a good compromise.
Just for the record, so this vote today on this overlay, I know there's some issues, and we've talked about it on the south end.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't affect
Other
that
zoning,
right
this
now.
doesn't
This
have
is just the
anything to
north
do with
end.
any of those properties.
is it fair to say that this almost would act like like tiers or a master plan when it comes to an individual seeking a zone change down the road?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would provide guidance and we've had that, for instance, on these properties right here. This is where the barn is, reception center. People came in here, wanted to look at a rezone on this property and wanted to do some overnight cabins. Well, there was no overnight stays in this area, so they couldn't do that. So they want to now rezone all this property to commercial. This is residential R5, and they can't do residential R5, so they want to rezone it to commercial so that they can have some uses there. And so it guides future land use decisions for rezoning and subdivision development, and it's certainly.
So not unlike like the tier system or master plan type. Yeah.
Correct.
Commissioner Cousins.
Anyway, that's a question you hold public hearing for this ordinance, and then I'd be glad to respond to any other questions.
Okay. So we do have a public hearing for this.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead. We have some comments in the audience. We'll go ahead and declare this public hearing open for this item, agenda item number 2. Bill.
My name is William Pressgrove. I am an adjunct professor at SUU for the air traffic control course. And so that is why I have concerns about this. I've also heard straight from the individual that lives under what is now the downwind leg of the close traffic pattern. And he's complaining that it makes so much noise, but the airport was there first. So my big question is, excuse me, as the aviation grows in this area. Like, for example, excuse me, right now we have SUU as training pilots for rotary aircraft as well as fixed wing. And they're using the area a lot more than when some of these people have built there. And those are the ones that are starting to complain because now they've got a plane coming across their overhead every 20 minutes instead of every half hour, every hour or hour and a half. So my concern is, and my question is, how will these people that are planning on building there, with this understanding that they have about the traffic going overhead, I can't remember what the
Easement.
Well, the navigation easement.
navigation easement. Is there going to be something in that navigation easement that lets them know that traffic will probably increase over their house as the use of the airport increases with the aviation programs and stuff?
I don't know, Reed, does it?
It's just assumed current use, but it describes the airport and that this is what it's used for. It doesn't say we have 10,000 planes a year or enplanements or how, it doesn't say this is how many and this is how many it will always be. It just says this is what the use is. You've got to recognize that that's what happens in that airspace.
Okay.
It doesn't say how many.
I can also tell you that the Terps, the people that set up the departure routes and the approach routes for the airport, can establish altitudes, required minimum altitudes for example, you're talking 6,000 feet. 6,050 feet is 1 nautical mile. So that's a mile from the end of the run, supposedly the end of the runway. Okay, so they can set it up so that there's a minimum altitude that they can operate in this area that you're talking about, but that has to be worked out with FAA.
And those have been established. We have a height restriction map that goes with the overlay that has, a 40 to 1 and a 7 to 1, and it has all of the isometric
Right.
details of what those heights are given any distance away from the runway.
So those are, my biggest concern is the increase in aviation, because I won't be annoyed if an airplane comes across my house every hour and a half, but if it comes down to where there's every 15 minutes I've got an airplane coming over my house, then these people might start complaining. So I would hope that future growth of the airport and airport usage might be taken into consideration as
Well,
accurate.
Along those lines, Bill, that's one reason we've I had Ron Torgerson with Sitla come over, and I think SU is really close to signing a lease on that property, around 2,000 flushes. They're going to pour 7 pads, 40 by 200 pads for the helicopter training program, where they can go out there and land 5 or 6 times a day without annoying so many neighbors, and so they're trying to mitigate some of those uses. But you're right. I mean, as people need to realize, it's an airport, and there's going to be noise, and it's going to probably increase over the years. But I know they're trying to mitigate that somewhat by, when it doesn't have to be done at an airport, it can be done out in the desert where it doesn't matter.
The other thing is, you have a departure corridor going both directions. Okay, when the wind's coming from the north, like it has been today, they're going to be departing to the north. So if they don't get to, they have to get to a certain altitude by a certain distance, and that people need to know that they're going to be flying 1,500 feet above your house on their departure, because that's all the higher they can get with the climb rate that the performance of their aircraft is and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of things to take into consideration.
Thank you for that insight. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close this public hearing. And any other discussion? entertain a motion. Are we,
I don't have anything else.
okay, all right.
Oh, I did the last one.
Well, I had some qualms, but I think I've overcome them, so. I move approval of ordinance number 2020-3, County Code Amendment, Cedar City Airport Overlay, Section 17.58.050, compatible land use regulations, provisions regarding land uses in the approach zone and the instrument approach zone, specifically near their north end.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 2020-3, which is the County Code Amendment, Cedar City Airport Overlay, Section 17.58.050 as described. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks, Reed. Now go to agenda item number 3, which is our public comment section. This is a 3-minute time limit per speaker for public comment. Participants should not repeat others' comments, only for items not on the agenda. No items related to commission's role as an appeal board. Comments should be directed to the commission. No attacks on other people's character. Is there any comments today?
Good morning. My name is George Wenzel. I live at Woods Ranch. I was on the internet and understand that they're proposing making an ice skating rink at Woods Ranch. I live there. I have a unique position. I live there year round, so I see what's going on all the time. One of the problems I have is I'm seeing during the winter about 70, 80 vehicles that come in, and there's virtually no parking space at all whatsoever. And putting an ice skating rink up there, my concern is, where are you going to put these other vehicles? Also, the water up there, Kids Pond gets about 50 people fishing to every one person ice skating up there. It's not good to take that water away from that area.
Okay, this is George, right?
George.
This is an agenda item. So let's when we get to that agenda item, we can talk about that, and we can. I know that your concerns can be addressed in that discussion as well. So
Okay.
you're welcome to speak again to that agenda item when we get to that, if you'd like.
When will that agenda be on?
It is what number is it?
I think it's next.
Is it next?
I think it's coming up. And you'll actually have more times, not within the parameters of the 3 minutes of the public comment. You'll actually have more time to speak
Okay.
when the agenda item is called.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. It's next. So, any other comments? Seeing none, we'll go to agenda item number 4, discussion and possible approval to proceed with the creation of a seasonal ice skating rink at Woods Ranch. Carrie Fain. And then, George, you're welcome, after she presents, to come up and discuss some of your concerns.
Hand these out again, sorry, I'm not very technological savvy,
No problem.
and we had some last minute meetings to look at before we put everything together, so. Good afternoon, Commission. Again, my name is Carrie Fain. I'm the head of Southern Utah Yeti. We're the local nonprofit group that tries to help the kids with some ice sports and something to do in the winter, so we don't find them all at Walmart causing grief. We've had quite a few meetings over the last about month since we were in last to propose a possible ice rink up at Woods Ranch. We've met with head of tourism commission. We've met with legal, had the roads department up. We've spoken with water, and we've tried to come to a great compromise on what would work for everyone. Our initial plan of trying to run the ice rink east to west, there was a little bit of issue with how much of the meadow it would tear up, so we went up with everybody on a field trip, kind of looked at it, resituated, and Now we'd like to run it north to west, the 190 feet. It's more of a level area, so there's not as much of an issue of tearing up and molesting the field itself. We addressed some different water issues. We had to track down who owned the water rights. So the storage rights on the kids' pond are owned by the DWR, but the actual water rights are the South and West Irrigation Company. And after reaching out to them, they have granted us use of it through the season. They do reserve the right at any time to pull that water right or water allowance back. And we went up again on a field trip and looked to see what would be best. There is a little pipe that, well, I say little, but it's a 10-inch pipe that runs from the center of the pond out down through the park and out on the west side, so that there's no overspill from the pond out over the banks, so that it makes a mess through the park. And that continues to run all year, and it feeds just a little culvert that goes down a little spring. Bless you. And looking at it, that's just the most convenient place to put a tank for water that would sit down into the ground. It would feed in. It's about a 1,500 gallon tank, and it would also allow it to continue to flow through the season. The DWR currently holds, I believe it's 8.9 acre water rights on storage and usage for the year. And including the initial freeze, we'd be somewhere close to 0.005% of an acre water use. So
Acre or acre feet?
acre feet, I believe. So we've put everything together, spoken with everyone, and we don't want it to be an eyesore. We want it to be a working relationship between everyone. We don't just want to be able to go up and take the rink and use it and go. We want to help better the park. We want to help better the area and make it something that's long-term and that helps work in the off-season as well. So we'd like to present this formal proposal for a cooperative relationship between Southern Utah Yeti, SUI, and Iron County in the project of a seasonal ice rink at Woods Ranch. After all the meetings and discussions with commissioners, tourism, and heads of affected departments, adjustments have been made to best suit all involved. The project would begin set up early October and be taken down early April or as soon as weather conditions allow. There will be no charge for use to the rink for the public, but we'd like to ask that all would be considerate of the schedules posted. Listed below is what each party would be responsible for bringing in the project together. The only thing not included in here is the power movement. We've met with Tom Heaton up there. We actually met Friday afternoon, and he brought his manager that oversees all of the work and scheduling here in our county, and they are very excited about a project. We've talked about, if you look at the picture, sorry, again, little bit of short notice on it just because we weren't sure when we could get Tom out there. On the picture, there are the 4 X's, and those are the power poles that are currently on the south side of the meadow. And when we visited up there and talked about it, that was one concern. They're a bit of an eyesore. We'd like to get the rest of it paved and have it looking very nice. And Maria brought up that it would be great to be able to bury that power and not have those poles up there in the way. They've had a pole break in the last year, and it's spendy to get them replaced. And there's one that actually has the power attached that runs up. It goes from the meadow over the paving and up the side of the mountain, and it supplies power for the homes that are up there, the seasonal homes. And Mark Heaton feels that it would be probably better and very easy to trench along the south side of the pavement, bury the lines, and put a new service pole there to run up.
And have it on that side.
Yes,
on the south
instead of
side.
running it all over. So that would eliminate all the poles along the meadow. And they would go so far as burying it under the other side, depending on what the county wanted to do. They are working on putting numbers together for us on this, but he has said that they are very willing to donate a very large amount of work and materials for the project. And anything that they cannot, or if it exceeds their limit, they will do at cost. And we, again, are willing to trench for everything. They said the only issue right now is that it may need to be in the spring that it's done versus now, just because time constraints with weather and everything else going on. And they are extremely busy right now with all the new homes, everything else going in. They're booked out pretty well, but they feel very confident that they could have this set up to be able to do the project in the spring. And that's something that won't affect us either way this year of running the rink temporarily this year. So we would like to really plan this out well to make sure it's done right.
Did you ask him about the light on the pole? If they could put the light on that pole if they move it to the south?
So he suggested putting up a new pole, because those will all come
Right,
out,
right.
and putting up something that's a little more substantial than the wood pole, something that's metal, and they will set it all up. They will add a new service on their pole for us, no problem. Because like Maria's brought to our attention, those poles, most of them are warped, bent, and just beat to heck, and they only last a couple of years up there with the weather that we get. So it was his suggestion that we put in some nicer, more heavy-duty poles, possibly metal.
But we could put a
And-
light on that pole.
but we
on the
can,
metal.
yes.
Do you have a-
Well, that was my question about light. Are you just gonna have the one light, or is there gonna be more light?
So for the rink itself, there will be 6 lights that are run out to it, and they'll be attached to the rink. So they'll come down after the season with the rink. They will pull about 9.6 amps between the 6 of them. They will be 16 foot. So
But there was 2 lights up there. There was one.
Oh,
on that
yeah, there's
corner
one on
pole.
each
So
corner
how do we
currently.
replace? Are we going to try to put that other light somewhere else, or?
he said that there could be one put directly on the bathroom,
Okay.
and that would help. Or just, like I said, 2 metal poles on the corners for lights.
Oh, okay.
Just like a regular parking lot or that, instead of having things strung all between all of them.
It'd clean that up a lot.
It really would. And if we can get Rocky Mountain Power involved on this level, I know looking at budgeting next year, Maria was really looking to hopefully put in to get the other bathroom replaced because it's run down, it's kind of an eyesore, and it's not really serviceable anymore. And that would open up the budget to be able to do that and, again, improve the rink. So we want to do not only what serves us best, but what serves the community and the park best. So we have put together, and that's just a little bit on the power. That's just kind of where we are with it. We're still, again, waiting on numbers for all eventualities. But Suey's responsibility in moving this project forward would be seeding field grass in the meadow before setup. So once we clear the location and level it out, there's been concern that it will just be a bald spot next year at the beginning of the spring, and it really won't grow back. So we will, from our pocket, go ahead and seed underneath our plastic ice rink tarp before it goes down, so that that it all has a chance to germinate over the winter, and it will be good to go, and it hopefully will be the prettiest spot of grass there next year, so that there's nothing left that you can tell we were there. We will be responsible for securing donations, lease, or purchase of all required materials for the physical ice rink, including the lighting, water use, and storage for the equipment. The transportation for all rink amenities and equipment to and from the rink, or to and from the park, Setup, prep, maintenance, and tear down of all ice rink equipment, including the water tank that we propose to put in, trenching for everything, rink lighting, and snow removal equipment. The scheduling use of the ice rink facility for special events, hockey, and learn to skate. All schedules will be posted with appropriate notice on site, and contact may be made through an email that we've listed here that we created so that our tourism and our county people aren't getting overwhelmed with the scheduling. We are happy to take care of that and make sure that it's kosher. We will have a nice sign posted up there with the regular schedule, so if anyone shows up, they have some idea. The general trash and cleanup of the rink, parking lot, bathroom, and site daily. Sue will have a volunteer schedule that will assure supervision during high-use evening times. Most of our board have children that play or children that skate, and most of their families skate, so it's not a hard thing to have somebody up there for a few hours a day in the evening overseeing. Our high school team knows that before any time they take the ice and after, they will be in charge of helping clean the area, removing garbage, removing any excess snow, things like that, and just trying to keep it as nice as possible. We will have a qualified Zamboni drivers, all scheduled to resurface the ice as needed. And we will do all snow removal on the ice rink surface and surrounding area. And what we would ask in return for the county to help make this project possible is help prepping and leveling the side of the rink on the meadow. It's a 190 by 90 footprint. We had Preston Nelson up. He came up to visit with us, and he thought that it might be maybe a day and a half of work at most. We thought a little bit more beforehand with the grader, but we're in the most level portion of the meadow, so it's going to be something fairly simple. And
We shot grades. It was about a foot of cut and fill. It's not too bad.
yeah, and Preston was great. He was ready to just hop in and get started, so we really appreciated him. On the power usage, I know that Commissioner Cousins had mentioned before that it'd be a possibility that the county would carry the power usage cost for the lights. Again, we are trying to go as cost efficient as possible. Like I said, 9.6 amps, I believe, is what we're pulling for the lights, and just a little bit more for the pump for the water and heating for the Zamboni water. And then the parking and drive snow removal that normally already is done by Bryce, and Suey will help in helping keep it up. If there's just a skiff that goes up, we'll get it covered. If it starts to overflow into the parking, we will take our blower out or shovels, whatever's needed, and help clean it up and try to keep as much open space for parking as possible so that we can have enough room for the users. And then just the use of the on-site restroom that's there. And again, we will be responsible for making sure that it stays clean, and hopefully no more of the toilet paper dispensers get taken. When we got up there on last Monday, it had been ripped off the wall and removed, and I guess that was the second time this fall that it's happened. So we understand the risk of having equipment up there, and we hope to negate that with having someone on site at least a few times a day to help with that. But we are ready to move forward. We're ready to address any concerns that there are and make any adjustments that you would suggest.
So it sounds like, just a few points, it sounds like the water issue, George, to your question, it sounds like the water is already out, the overflow from the pond, they would just use that. So they wouldn't actually, it wouldn't change anything because what's going in is coming out, and they're going to fill a tank and pump from that tank. So I don't think that would impact the pond. I did check with Nathan Moses at Water Rights, and he was going to change the advertisement, and that's maybe the one that went out. I need to go in and actually sign that, but Paul Bittman did email me back and got permission from his board with the Southwest Field Irrigation Company to use that water. The one question I had was, if you bury that tank, you wouldn't want to necessarily dig that up every year, would you? Wouldn't you just leave it on the ground?
No, it probably would be something that stayed, and it would be usable every year.
Right, that's what because you mentioned you had that on here to remove it, so I just didn't think
Oh,
that
no, I
makes sense.
meant just all the other general equipment.
Okay.
That's one thing that would stay.
And then as far as George is concerned with parking, with snow removal, I know that over the year, as the winter goes, Bryce's ability to move that snow is limited, and the parking encroaches with
Yes.
snow. And so what would you address there?
So to address that, we have a blower, and it shoots right about 60 foot that goes on the front of a little Kubota skidster. So we would help to clear that, push that back as it got caught up. Bryce usually pushes it into the meadow and then onto the south side of the pavement.
Yes.
And yeah,
I live
yep,
there.
yes,
I live there, so
yep.
I see it all the time.
Yep, and we're up and down every day. My husband and I work up the mountain. We build up there, so you know we go by and we've seen your truck there. But we would continue to push that and make sure it stays back behind those boundaries so that it's not continuing to encroach on the parking, so that there's as much parking there as possible.
Well, I usually, during the winter, I help clean some of the snow,
Yep.
go into the Remodels and so forth. My only concern is...
George, you want to come up so we can hear you in
Yep,
the mic,
absolutely.
please?
Thank you. By the way, that was a very good presentation, and I like what you had said. My concern is during the winter when there is a lot of people, especially you'll see 70, 80 vehicles up there, and there's virtually no place to park at all. on there, and that's my concern, is the parking as well as the water. Well, you've addressed the water very, very well, and it's a very good plan you have. I do support that. I thought it was going to be a building that was going to go up, and then we're going to have a problem with parking. We will have to address the parking problems, because you are going to have more people up there, considerably more. So that is one of the things. Everything else sounds good on there. You guys go up there and help clean the park. I would like that, because every year I'd spend about 2 days cleaning that park on there. And especially with all the sledders and everything else, and now you have skaters. One other thing is, you are going to be providing transportation from Cedar City to the park. Am I correct?
Are we going to be bringing up skaters?
Yes.
Just individuals with families, individuals as use. It's free to the public to use, so anybody with skates and equipment can
Well, we're 11 and a half from Cedar, and so if somebody gets hurt there at the park, they'll have to drive themselves down, and it's a little concerning when you have somebody that's. It's different when you're going and nobody's hurt, but when you're in a hurry, you're more susceptible to having an accident, especially during the winter. That road is treacherous during the winter.
So, and there is the call box there for
Yes.
emergencies that we plan to make sure everybody knows is there. There is no service there besides that.
I have service in my house.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
Oh, wow, I'm gonna have to figure out how the heck you get that.
HughesNet, it's satellite
Okay.
on there. But I think I'm going to get behind that. If you can get this issue about the parking, I think I will give you my full support.
I really appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you.
George, what was your last name for the record?
Wenzel, Wentzel.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
John knows
Got it.
me.
Yeah.
He's one of my
We're-
neighbors.
We're
Okay.
cabin neighbors up there.
All right, thank you. So one more question, Carrie. I know that Dallin Staley, who is going to be providing the Zamboni and the dasher boards and some of the equipment, had asked the county to sign an agreement, and we did not want to do that. And
Yes.
you mentioned that Big Four Development, who is your husband Chad's employer,
Company, yes.
that you guys would work that out. Have you
Absolutely.
worked all that out with Dallin?
I've called Dallin, we're supposed to be meeting up sometime this week.
Okay.
So,
And so that, and Alma's talked to Johnny Miller, our insurance, and as long as the county, I think, plays the role we've described, and we do not charge for use, it's no different than anything else up there. People are on their own.
yes.
And it basically absolves us of liability as a county, and that's our biggest concern, right?
Yep, and Maria's
That
done.
was Johnny Miller, who's our insurance carrier. That was his concern. We can't carry that liability.
No, absolutely, and I don't see that it makes sense for you to. You wouldn't be responsible for the equipment anyways. That's something we're responsible for. So it makes far more sense for us to carry the liability on that. And Maria's done a fantastic job up there with the signage and use at your own risk. Warning, you're welcome. We want you here, but if you do dumb things and dumb things happen, you're responsible. So. Oh.
So this will be kind of a trial run. If we approve
Absolutely.
this, we'll see how it goes this year and see if it works and continues next, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've got a question as far as, and back to the parking issue. So are we still talking about, I don't know if tournaments is the right word, or at least hockey games?
Hockey games.
How many vehicles or how many people in attendance do you generally have at a hockey game? And what does that mean for vehicles with two teams and family and folks coming in?
So we would try to schedule it in low usage times if we did that. So early Saturdays, very late Fridays, early Sundays if it needs to be. Some teams, that's what they do, so that there isn't that overflow. But spectators, especially with an outdoor rink, they're a little more limited because it's so darn cold.
Right.
So it's usually just the diehard parents out there shivering together, huddled into a mass. So generally there's about 20 players on a team, 2 teams, so 40, and then just supporting staff, so maybe another 5 vehicles for an average team.
Right. And I guess my concern is I know that on a good sledding day, we'll have 50 or 60 vehicles there. And I know that at 50 and 60 vehicles, is when we start to have overflow out onto Highway 14, and then UDOT starts to call and are upset
Yep.
about vehicle parking. I mean, I'm concerned that we try and cram 100+ vehicles in there, that we just don't have the space to do that.
Yes. And that's something that Maria brought to our attention also. And we will be as diligent as possible to, if we see someone pull up along Highway 14, we will have someone out there, hey, you need to remove it. That's also a problem even up at the aquatic center when we had the rink up there, parking along the back drive up there, and it would get very congested. And Commissioner Cousins had come up with the idea of putting fencing around in the back, and so we had people able to park up there, but it was a daily occurrence and it was usually the same people. You had to go out and tell them, nope, you still can't park here today. It's no different than yesterday. So it's shooing them out. And I think towards the end of the season, as we begin to build and people find out where we are now, that we will see a lot of people up there and parking will get tight. And we're just going to have to do the best we can this year to kind of combat it as best as we can. Unless we pour another slab across the street somewhere, I don't see us having any more parking. I think it's a good problem to have. It shows usage, but it's still a problem. We understand that, and we're going to do the best that we can to be diligent and try to keep it as safe and as uniform as possible. Like we said, trying to help clean up that snow around the edges, things like that, so that we are keeping parking spaces open, making sure that people are parking responsibly as well and not coming in and parking sideways and things like that. But for when we know that we will have teams that are wanting to come down, that's the best way to combat it, is to put it in the low usage times. And it's going to be very cold up there at an 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning or a 9 o'clock at night, but that's kind of what they're coming for, is the experience, and that's part of it. You get to freeze your toes off.
You think you can, in your communication with teams that are coming in and those that say limited parking is
Carpool.
extremely limited,
Yes.
please carpool. And
Absolutely, and we
maybe
can
you
put
could
that out for
even-
everything.
Oh, and maybe SU, I don't know how much they use. I know they use their cabin
Mm-hmm.
retreat year round, but they've got a, maybe in those off times you could work out an agreement where you could park and shuttle people. I don't know. I'm
Absolutely.
just
We
throwing that out
actually,
there, but-
James Jordan of After School All Stars, he runs a wonderful program, and he provides things and activities for kids that don't necessarily have somewhere to go after school and things like that. And he's offered us an agreement to set up to already use a bus that he just purchased, a full-size school bus, for our hockey teams and that already this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if we could work out an agreement with him on that, and again with SUU, and work on shuttling. I can definitely reach out. We've got a few friends at SUU that would be happy to, I think, shepherd us in and try to get some talks going. There was one point I didn't touch on. We have spoken to Ashdown just in discussing slightly what we want to do, but we were looking to get the remainder of it paved up there, and then a small little spot going out to the meadow for the Zamboni. We're supposed to meet up with them later this week. They seem interested in donating and helping out, but again, time constraints for the weather changing, and they are also very busy. It may be spring before something like that is done, but it sounds like they're game to go ahead and donate a good chunk of asphalt to get most of that finished up.
Maria,
Is there
oh,
any
sorry,
other
go ahead.
is there any place up there that we could clear and put gravel down and increase the parking right on site?
We could look at the,
Maria, do you want to come up to the mic? And I was just going to ask you if you wanted to give any input.
there's an area, let me think here, kind of on that east side towards the large pavilion, in which we could maybe go into the meadow slightly and avoid the baseball diamond. So there may be an area right in there, but honestly, we're
Pretty tight.
We're tight. I mean, it's 44 acres, but it's 44 acres of multiple recreation use.
So on the east end of the field, you're saying we could maybe park right there
there may be a possibility of cutting in
Perpendicular parking,
something in
cut that in
there.
and gravel that a little bit.
Yeah.
George? Come
Would you come up to the mic, please?
The, excuse me. I don't mean to turn my back on you guys. The east side, where, not the east side, the west side, where the old ball diamond's at, and that little playground there, that area there hardly ever gets any use except the little playground there. And it's got that brush and everything else. That probably will be a better spot than it would be on all the way on the east side.
I'm hesitant to go onto that area. Just a lot. I don't know. I'm just a little hesitant in taking out that area just because it doesn't get a lot of use. There's an aesthetic right there that I would really like to keep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that pavilion is particularly used for weddings and that area. And so I just tearing up more and more of that dirt just makes me extremely nervous. So I would like to keep it as I like to keep some of that as natural as I can.
That area there is where almost everybody goes to go sledding, and that's the area that gets the heaviest parking area.
And I recognize that, but I don't know. There's just something I'm just trying to protect that part of that area.
Well, there are some willows there, and it's a little bit of a. I mean,
there's something special about it, and I mean, I know I can't put an emotional thing behind it, but where on that other side, where over by the other pavilion, it's just kind of a, it's just kind of a dead little spot in the meadow. So, and we don't know what's underneath there. I think that water runs underneath there.
Yeah, somewhere along there in the pipe.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we can access that as well fairly easily.
Maybe the area where the old bathroom is, kind of the drive there below the sledding hill, there might be a little bit of room there for a couple spots. Yeah.
We were going to sled right into it. I mean, we have sledders, and we can tell them not to sled, but they are going to sled.
No, we don't.
And they're going to do
we do.
They're going to do dumb things.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
We have a lot of signs that say any downhill stuff is illegal.
We're going to be.
It's we already have a bunch of signs saying don't sled.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, that's any downhill stuff is prohibited.
And it's a
officially.
little weird because we have signs that say don't sled, and yet
still
we're
have to
making
worry
it
about them,
so
yeah.
possible for them.
And maybe we could even come up with some hay bales to put at the bottom of there as a stopper, but we're willing to do what it takes, whatever it needs to be, so everyone's comfortable.
And I think, Carrie, the biggest thing is you need to let your people know that this is a trial run.
Absolutely.
And if we have a lot of problems, it may not happen again. So I think that'd be a good incentive for people to, carpool, be respectful, do the best they can. So.
I know I'll probably be hauling 20 kids up every time I come, so.
You might want to just buy a school bus.
Yeah,
There you
I think so. I really do think so.
Well, and so my question, and I don't know that Carrie can necessarily answer this, but as the commissioner that's the liaison to tourism and to Maria, it seems like every time there's a project that comes up into the county, somehow we default to Maria's budget.
Yes.
In a lot of different ways. I want to make sure, we talk about, well, the county might have to pick up some power costs. Where does that come from? What budget stream does that come from? You talked about, donations and in-kind type of stuff. Are those things going to be secured prior to even breaking ground? I mean, is there a possibility that we break ground and then some of these other funding streams don't materialize? Or I'm hearing, well, we're going to talk with Ashdowns, we're going to talk with SUU. I just want to make sure that those things are in place before we break ground.
Right. Majority of them are secured, and we do have cash substantial enough to pay for 98% of the project as we've mapped it out on our end of what we've asked for.
Probably not power though, right?
Not power, no.
Because that's expensive.
So that's where we're reaching out to Rocky Mountain Power, and again, Tom Heaton is coming in. We are starting a GoFundMe for a windfall just in case to help out, things like that. We've got a few other fundraisers in the works for just in case, or if there is an issue with any of the property that we have, so that we can make sure we can take care of it. We don't just want to be penniless coming into this, putting every last penny we have into it and not being able to take care of it after the fact. And the Ashdown and the Rocky Mountain Power, those are more for the aesthetics, for the park. It's something that we can do without. The burying of the power, the asphalt, we can operate without those things, but we are looking ahead to help keep it from coming out of Maria's budget to make the park nicer. We definitely want to help do what we can to make it just a nicer project and facility up there altogether, not just when we're using it. Because I use it year round. My kids and us, we go up there, and I would like to do what we can to help it. We would rather have a good working relationship to where we scratch your back, you scratch ours, do what we can to make everything better, instead of just doing the bare minimum of this is what we can do to get by to make our project work, and you guys figure out the rest.
It seems like the biggest liability of the county, to Mike's concern, is power. And
Yes.
it more so is Ron, or not Tom going to get you a price and then let you know what in kind they can do, what they can
Yes.
donate? Okay.
Yes,
Because that'd be
yeah,
nice going into budget season if we feel like, as a commission, cleaning up those old poles and some that are rotting and need to be replaced anyway, it may be in our best interest to kick in some to Maria's budget to do that, to help with that.
Absolutely.
And it may be, a positive thing. I don't know if that
Well, and
helps.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the other concern I have is that we're picking up a new park altogether with the Vermilion Castle up right hand, and so we're going to add another 33% workload and another area that's going to take a lot of maintenance and upkeep. We're adding that to our Parks Department responsibility. That's already, I think, going to tax their resources. I just want to make sure that this doesn't become another burden, because I mean, if we do this, and I love the concept, I just want to make sure that we're doing it right, and that
Yes.
we're not doing a ready, shoot, aim.
yes.
That
And-
we're I want to make sure that we're planning it correctly, so that it is a cool thing and it does survive, that it doesn't turn into a liability this season and then we see it go away.
No, exactly. And that's why we've scaled clear back on costs, on exactly what we'd like to see put in to make it more temporary, more affordable, a little bit more sensible this year for as quickly as we are getting it put in. And looking at getting the numbers from Tom, the numbers, if there is any, from Ashdown, and other things that we want to see happen next year, I can do a lot with some time fundraising wise. And we are very happy to do that, to find out, all right, this is what the power is going to be. The county is willing to kick this in, but this X amount of dollars is still up there. Do we force and take it out of the tourism budget and make Maria suffer? Because like I said, the new bathroom up there that she would like to put in for is a fantastic idea, and it's needed. So we would like to help carry some of that burden if possible. And given through the winter months, things like that, where I can set up fundraisers, can make plans and say, all right, this is a benchmark we've got to hit as an organization to help out and pull our weight. That's what we want to do. We definitely want to go above and beyond and do what we can. Even looking at when we were operating up at the Aquatic Center and wrap tax every year, before we put in for wrap tax, we'd try to get with Chris or whoever was in charge and ask, what is it that you need in your budget for wrap tax, but you don't think you'll get, that we can help with? We got the parking lot paved up there one year with wrap tax coming out of our budget. We got all of the curb and gutter fixed and repaired because they knew that they wouldn't get it. It already suffered for years, and it's something that we could help because we weren't needing much at the ice rink. So we look to try to help and do that, because if that park is operating better, if it's a nicer facility, it's better for us all around as well. It makes it easier for us.
With your skid steer, I mean, having been up there, we've got a family cabin in the area. I mean, it's not unheard of to get a 5-foot snowstorm,
Yes.
and that starts to overwhelm Bryce
Mm-hmm.
on that blower. And then we'll get like 10, 12 foot, banks of snow, which is, still a third of the parking lot is uncovered. Do you feel like that equipment is going to be able to keep up and maybe chew through some of those tall banks? Can it raise, how tall of a
It will
bank
take,
can it get through?
It will take time, but yes. And Maria brought up the point. She says, well, what if we have a huge snowstorm and you can't get all the snow removed and you have to shut down? Then we have to shut down for a couple of days. That's just, we're beholden to the weather. Anyone that's
Sure.
used our rinks here in the past, they understand that we are beholden to Mother Nature, and it's not unheard of to miss a day or two.
So same question on the ice then. Would you be able to take your skid steer and clear the ice and then run the Zamboni over? Is that the plan?
Yes. Yep,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
exactly it. And I'll tell you honestly, inside of the ice rink will collect more snow than anywhere outside.
Right.
It just naturally does with those walls, with the boards around it. It'll get probably twice what it does out on the surrounding ground.
Well, and a windy
Mhm.
period will get it too. Okay. That was my concern, is just being able to, because I've seen 12, 15
Oh,
foot
yes.
banks there, and they'll melt down eventually, but
Yeah. But no, trying to push them and continue, it will take some time. And like I said, we aren't scared to shut down. It sucks, but we all know that that's a possibility going into this because Mother Nature is what it is.
Right. I did have one idea.
Yes.
So that you have advantage. The reason there's such a good sledding hill there, and this is maybe utterly impractical, but if
a sledding hill we're not supposed to use.
a sledding hill that's illegal to use, correct? But there is that north-facing slope, and as you get later in the season or earlier in the season, you would actually have more shade if you could somehow nestle the facility up against the hill, but that would require turning everything on its head.
Yes.
So.
Yep. And that actually is why the whole reason.
Oh, I'm gonna get. I retract my comment.
No, and that's exactly.
You're taking the minutes. You have to.
There was a blank spot there.
Well, and that's what the appeal was on Woods Ranch
Right.
versus anywhere else, is that natural
kind of
wall bowl area.
Right.
You get less wind, you get less sun, and it makes it a little bit more practical to do a natural freeze rink. So but no, I never. I'm not on.
that was my idea and
Not
my
at
idea
all.
alone. Well, yeah, but significant cost. Yeah.
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 Yep.
Alma stepped out for just a
Okay.
minute. So
Can I ask a question for a moment?
Sure.
Are we going to have some sort of written agreement about the terms of what we're agreeing to and not? I mean, it seems like that would be important. I don't know much of the details really, other than what you guys have discussed today.
Could you mind sitting down with
Oh, absolutely.
Mr. Edwards and
Yep.
putting that together, an agreement that we could
Absolutely.
sign? And would that be signed with Yeti
Yes,
and Iron
yep,
County?
Southern
Just
Utah Yeti,
just
yes.
a MOU, memorandum of understanding type thing? Is that what you're talking about, Mike, or
I think we'd have to.
something?
I mean, I need to understand more of what the terms are, or what we're doing here. But
Okay.
yeah, some sort of contract that talks about whose responsibilities are what, and what we're agreeing to, what they're agreeing to. It just needs to be in writing so that there's not any misunderstandings later.
Well, and it would probably be a good idea to have a sunset clause built into it to figure out if you have to unwind it, how it unwinds, and who has responsibilities and those kind of things.
So, how do we do that? I mean, are we gonna have to wait and do that and put it on the next agenda?
Yeah, you have to have it on the agenda to do. I mean, and I have to prepare it still.
I just know that I know they were hoping to get approval today so they could move forward with some things, but how's that gonna work for you? I mean,
We'll make it work.
got another meeting.
It's-
I mean, the weather's gonna be a concern at some
Mhm.
point.
In terms of time being of the essence, I mean, you are fighting the season.
Yes.
Could, Mike, what if they made an approval contingent upon an agreement? I mean, I guess that does expose a bit of liability without an agreement, but.
Yeah.
And I think that was my final question. That was my final bullet point that I had written down, was the agreement, because in our conversations that's come up before, the importance of having some kind of an agreement, contract, whatever that is, with the county in place. I think we've got to have with a project of this scale, with the potential liabilities and the intricacies. I think we've got to have that in place. That was my next question, and Mike brought that concern up prior to me, but I think we've got to have something in place before we start hauling in equipment and moving dirt. In my mind, that makes sense.
So our next commission meeting is when?
October 12.
October 12th?
Mm-hmm.
That may be pushing it a bit.
And
Would there be an appetite for a special?
And I was just going to say, I wouldn't be opposed to, if we can get that done, to have a special commission meeting to approve that.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Mike, do you think you could get with Carrie today and put something together, and we could have a special meeting at some point? And
If you guys want to have a special meeting, we can have a special meeting. Just let me know when, and I'll do my best to get it done by then. I mean, I would hope you give me at least a week.
Okay.
It's really easy to talk in generalities. Yeah, we support the idea, but the devil's always in the details, right? And we need to make sure that we understand what those details are. So.
Okay. And I'd thought of that too, but I knew that we didn't want to sign a contract with you because you were going to sign a contract with Staley's for the use of the equipment. So, but that's a great point. So, if you can get with Mr. Edwards,
Okay.
Carrie, and
Absolutely.
put something together, and as soon as he can get that done,
Okay.
we will. I suppose we won't have anything to vote on today, right? Just wait until that's done. Is
Yeah,
that
let's get. I would feel more comfortable having a contract and get the approval with our attorney's office before I would be comfortable in voting on that. But with that being said, let's get it done and look at it and move forward.
Oh, is it going to be a contract or an MOU? What's it going to be, Mike? Do you think? Just whatever.
I would envision it more like a contract. But.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and go to that. We'll do that, and then we'll, as soon as we can, call a special meeting, Carrie,
Okay.
in the interest of time and the weather and approaching.
That sounds great, and I very much appreciate it, and I appreciate the questions and everything and the thought that's gone into it. It helps us make sure we're doing it right, and I appreciate that very much. And Maria, thank you. So, and our board had these made up for you guys. There, save the ice 2020 shirts.
Thank you.
This isn't worth over $50, is it?
No, it's not, unfortunately.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Paul's gonna have a satchel to bring home all of his swag from the meeting today.
I'm good. I can.
All right, we'll move forward. Should we, and I didn't really, I wonder if we ought to move agenda item 9 next for these poor folks that have waited patiently. Would that be okay with you? Let's go to agenda item 9 and next, and let them do their presentation on domestic violence awareness. Is Kaylee?
Yeah.
Kaylee? I can't recognize people with a mask. I'm sorry.
Be 9. Related to 9, right?
And then 10, is that yours too? Okay. Okay. We'll let you handle both those.
Thank you.
So commissioners, while they're handing things out, I just wanted to, I'm Brant Wadsworth. I'm the executive director at Canyon Creek Services. I just wanted to say a personal thank you on behalf of the organization for allowing us some time to come in and talk to you today. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Canyon Creek Services, as an organization, as you know, has been in the community for 26 years. We serve Iron Beaver and Garfield counties. We're busier than we've ever been before. And so we are very much trying to raise awareness of who we are and what we do so we can provide services, but we're also working very hard to become as well known for preventing violence as we are for serving those who've experienced it. So I just wanted to say a personal thank you as the executive director on behalf of the organization for your serious consideration of what Kaylee has to talk about today. Kaylee is our awareness and prevention director. It is her department's entire job to prevent this violence. And so without further ado, I will turn you over to the brilliant Kaylee Bronson-Cook.
Thank you guys so much for having me. And before I start, I just want to make sure that I don't forget to give credit where credit is due, and offer my sincere thanks to Sheriff Carpenter, Officer Detective Commissioner Blake, and to Attorney Michael Edwards from the County Attorney's Office for all of the work that they do for survivors in our community. A round of applause wouldn't be enough to thank them for all that they do for survivors in our community. So like Brant said, I'm the Awareness and Prevention Director at Canyon Creek, and I'm here to talk to you today about Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which is coming up in October. And we'll have time at the end of the presentation for questions, but I'm just going to jump right in. I'll be mindful of the time. It worked, and now it's not working.
Oh,
it's okay.
That's probably my fault.
No, it's okay.
I'll try it. Oh, no.
It's all right.
No, what have I done?
I broke it. I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't you. There's lots of stuff happening on the other screen that you're doing.
Oh, that's exciting. Like I don't even know what impact I'm having.
Now try it.
Okay, perfect. Alrighty, so domestic violence, I just wanted to jump in and talk about what it is and what it isn't. So domestic violence is defined as an attempt or attempts by one person in an intimate relationship to gain power and control over another person. Domestic violence can be, as we know, I'm sure many of you know, physical, sexual, emotional, verbal, mental, digital, and financial, and it's never, ever the victim's fault. Just for some context about how widespread this issue is, nationally, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men will experience physical violence from an intimate partner in their lifetime. In Utah, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men will experience physical violence from an intimate partner in their lifetime, so note that those are higher than the national average. And also that those numbers only include physical violence. That doesn't include emotional, verbal, financial, other types of violence, which we know can be just as harmful. More than 40% of adult homicides in Utah are domestic violence related, and 1 in 4 children in the U.S. will experience abuse, neglect, or maltreatment, and at least 1 in 15 children are exposed to intimate partner violence each year. So at Canyon Creek Services, our vision is communities free of domestic violence and sexual assault. We're previously Canyon Creek Women's Crisis Center, and we're a community agency, a nonprofit agency that serves Iron, Beaver, and Garfield counties. We provide, like Brant mentioned, free and confidential services to survivors of domestic and sexual violence. But we also provide prevention, community education, and awareness services. And also, as Brant mentioned, we've seen tremendous growth in the past years. A lot of people know us as the Women's Shelter, and we've grown to be much more than that. And even with our shelter, it's routinely full, which is just heartbreaking. So what do we do at Canyon Creek Services? The short answer is we provide both intervention and prevention services. So we are most well known for intervention services, like I've mentioned, serving survivors of domestic and sexual violence. But we also provide prevention services. As you can see, our Survivor Services Department offers much more than just emergency shelter. We also provide comprehensive services to survivors that includes housing services, child and youth services, therapy referral, court and medical accompaniment, and much more, which unfortunately Mike knows all too well, the court accompaniment part. We've had many run-ins. So just to give you an idea of how many and what kinds of services we provide, these are the numbers from last fiscal year. We run on July 1 to July 1, so this was from 2019 to 2020. We served 770 people, and only 165 of those people accessed our shelter. So our advocates are providing diverse services to lots of different people who have lots of different needs. And these numbers, unfortunately, only show a portion of the violence that we know is occurring in our community, because many survivors never seek help or report the abuse that they've experienced. But the good news is, now that I've thoroughly depressed everybody, prevention is possible. So violence is a community public health issue that can be prevented. And when I started working in this field, I thought that the only people that could ever do anything about domestic violence were the people involved in it, the individual perpetrators or victims or whatever else. However, I've learned through the work that I do now that regardless of personal experience, that every person has a role to play in preventing violence from ever happening in the first place in our communities. People are shaped by their environments, and so if we change the things in our environments that send the message that for some reason violence is okay or acceptable, then we can prevent violence from ever happening and change people's behavior. We understand at Canyon Creek that our vision of communities free of domestic violence and sexual assault is not going to be accomplished overnight. It's a big task that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of commitment, but we know that from research both globally and locally that it is possible and that we can prevent violence from ever happening in the first place. One example I like to use is of seatbelts. So seatbelts of some kind were required in all cars in the 1960s, and multiple surveys in the early 80s found that only 10 to 15% people wore their 10 to 15% of people wore their seatbelts. But after laws were passed in most states that required people to wear seatbelts, and those kind of social norms about wearing a seatbelt became more common, those numbers quickly rose to 50%, and now on average 90% of people wear their seatbelts. So we know that it's possible. When communities, states, and our society decided to dedicate resources to promoting health and safety of communities, it worked. So similarly, we can prevent domestic and sexual violence through public health focused prevention strategies that are used to decrease rates of violence perpetration. So prevention work exists on a spectrum. So as you can see, a lot of people think that prevention is only, education, and that certainly is a big part of it. But as we can see, we have to address prevention at all of these levels. So this includes everything from educating providers to influencing policy and legislation. And it's important to recognize also, like I mentioned earlier, that prevention is not intervention. So we do provide intervention services to survivors, but what we're trying to really get at is we want to prevent violence from ever happening in the first place, and we need your help to make that happen. So in order to do that, we have to do something. We have to address what are called risk and protective factors. So risk factors increase the likelihood for violence perpetration, and protective factors decrease the likelihood of violence perpetration. So an example of a risk factor is a weak law or a weak policy that's related to violence, because we know that laws at local and state and national levels all increase or decrease the likelihood for violence perpetration. On the other hand, a protective factor for violence is community support and connectedness. We know that when communities are more connected and people feel more supported, that they're less likely to participate in perpetrating violence or other unwanted, unhealthy behaviors. So, and on that note as well, people are also more likely to step in and step up if someone is in an unsafe situation when communities are more connected. So when I talk about prevention, I think a lot of people have in their brain risk reduction, and any young female might think of, having the pepper spray that her mom gave her, which I'm speaking from personal experience, which certainly has a role to play in all that I'm talking about today. But there's a big difference between preventing violence and reducing risk for violence. So messages that focus on personal safety or protecting a potential victim from a perpetrator is risk reduction, not prevention. Because when we at Canyon Creek talk about creating communities free of domestic violence and sexual assault, we aren't talking about communities where everybody is ready to protect themselves or defend themselves from perpetrators and abusers. We're talking about communities without perpetrators. I know it's a big goal and it's an important goal. But I just want to point out that things like telling people, don't walk home alone, or, carry pepper spray, take a self-defense class, while those are all very helpful in helping people feel safe and to protect themselves, that's not really prevention because we're not addressing the root of the problem, right? So you may wonder, what are we actually doing at Canyon Creek to prevent violence from happening? And that is a great question. I've listed here some of the strategies that are a part of our organizational strategic plan to prevent violence from happening in Beaver, Iron, and Garfield counties. And we know that these strategies work because they're informed by evidence-based best practices at the national, state, and local levels. So we work very closely with the Utah Department of Health in devising these strategies for our community, and they're more specific to our community, and we know that they work. So with all of that said, I'd like to talk to you today about how you can get involved and be a part of the solution to end violence here in Iron County. So here are some examples of the ways, only a quick list. Most importantly, you can join us on the Canyon Creek Violence Prevention Coalition. You can email me. I've given you my business card. We'd love to have you. This coalition is a group of community stakeholders that come together to prioritize efforts and strategize on ways that we can prevent violence in our community. And we also have included in what I believe my coworker Tanisha gave you an invitation to a luncheon that we're hosting on October 14th at the Cedar City Visitor Center. And so if you're interested in that, we would love to have you join us and learn a little bit more about what we're doing to prevent violence locally. But one thing that you can do today to show your effort to preventing violence in our community is by supporting our Domestic Violence Awareness Month efforts. So Domestic Violence Awareness Month began and was established in 1987. As I previously mentioned, Domestic Violence Awareness Month is considered to be the month of October. And the purpose of Domestic Violence Awareness Month is to honor those that have lost their lives due to domestic violence, celebrate those who have survived, and to continue the work to prevent violence from ever happening in the first place. And proclamations from local, state, and federal government agencies help us to increase public awareness and promote our prevention efforts. More information about the events and initiatives that we have going on for Domestic Violence Awareness Month this year can be found at this website, canyonCreekServices.org/Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So on that note, this is just some of the things that we talked about today. Sorry, the formatting got kind of screwy, but I really appreciate you having me here today. It's an important topic that needs more public recognition, and it needs support from people like you for us to be able to go out into the community and do the important work that we're doing. So I thank you so much. You can follow us on social media. And if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them, whether that be about Canyon Creek or about prevention or about what we're doing for October. You may see you will see, I hope, some banners here on the Main Street in Parowan as well as in Cedar City, promoting Domestic Violence Awareness Month to raise awareness. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'm happy to yield my time back to Commissioner Cousins or whoever's chairing the meeting.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Very much. Any questions? Or
Oh, thank you. Just thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
We communicate fairly often, and these guys are awesome.
Yeah.
Now we have this proclamation. Would you like me to read that?
That would be great. Yes. Yes.
And that's agenda item number 10. And do we actually do we vote to approve this?
You can, yeah.
Okay. So let me read it, and
Please
then
do.
we'll entertain a motion to approve. Does that
Great,
sound good?
thank you.
Kaylee?
Yeah.
This is Iron County Proclamation 2020-1, a proclamation that the month of October to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas in the United States, October is recognized as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. The acronym is DVAM. The goal of DVAM is to raise public awareness about domestic violence and educate communities on how to prevent it. And whereas 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men will experience stalking, physical or sexual abuse from an intimate partner, a statistic that does not include those who experience verbal and emotional abuse from an intimate partner. And whereas Canyon Creek Services is a local nonprofit advocacy organization that provides free, confidential services to survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, as well as community education and prevention programming. Last fiscal year, CCS served 770 survivors. The need to prevent domestic violence in our area is evident. And whereas the safety and well-being of members of our community is of utmost importance, and domestic violence can affect someone regardless of age, race, religion, or economic status, and affect children, families, and the health of our community. And whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month calls attention to the fact that domestic violence is widespread and impacts our entire community. Now therefore, the County Commission of Iron County do join with Canyon Creek Services Violence Prevention Coalition, as well as with advocates and communities across the United States in taking action to prevent domestic violence. We do hereby proclaim October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month and reaffirm Iron County's commitment to ending domestic violence in our community this month and every day. Together we can create communities free of domestic violence and sexual assault. So, thank you. Whoever put that together, good job.
That'd be me.
That'd be you.
Thank you.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve that proclamation.
Dig down to my paperwork. I would move to approve Proclamation 2020-1, proclaiming the month of October Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this proclamation 2020-1. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to agenda item number 5. Discussion and possible approval of a proposed partial vacated and amended plat of lots
Can you put me on?
18 and 19, Block B, Skyview Estates, Unit A, located Estates, Unit A, located in the southeast quarter section 34, Township 34 South, Range 9 West, Salt Lake Base, and Meridian, Iron County, Utah.
Thank you. Have this plat up on the board here. You can see, and should have had it attached in your packet. It's simply a combining of lots 18 and 19, vacating lot 18 and creating lot 18 larger, vacating lot 19. Often we do it with a combined lot and be renamed lot 18A, what this should have been, but they didn't do that on this one with different engineers. So we're good though. It complies. We've notified. I don't know if there's any. It looks like I recognize everyone here, and I don't think anybody's an adjacent lot owner, but we have notified them. Hadn't heard anything or any concern with them. Does not require a public hearing. Simply requires an action of the commission to approve this partial vacate and amend of this subdivision to combine these two lots and make that lot line go away.
Okay. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of a proposed partial vacated and amended plat of lots 18 and 19, Block B, Ski View Estates, Unit A, located in the southeast one-quarter section 34, Township 34 South, Range 9 West, Salt Lake Basin, Meridian, Iron County, Utah.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve this proposed partial vacated and amended plat of lots 18 and 19 as described. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Get your signature on that
Uh-huh.
now as well? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the next one, 6, item number 6, discussion and possible approval for proposed county policy, general plan, code, interpretation, tier 3, and explanation of specific clarifications in tier 3 for Summit and Newcastle areas.
Thank you, Commissioners. We have had this on the agenda for the Planning Commission for several months also, trying to best evaluate how to apply the tier rules in tier 3 where there's some interpretation there that has been interpreted differently, and we thought it might be good to just adopt a policy that clarified the direction for tier 3. This is an evaluation of specifically Summit and Newcastle Tier 3 areas. And you'll see in the draft policy that you have before you that the consideration is to look at Tier 3 Newcastle Summit differently than we look at the rest of Tier 3. As you recall, the Tier 3 area, and we've talked a little earlier about the tiering system, Tier 3 was created with only the Summit and Newcastle tiers as Tier 3 when it was originally implemented in 1995. Since that time, we've incorporated 2 additional Tier 3 areas. One is Aspen Creek up by Bryan Head, and the other is the Three Peaks Golf Community out by Three Peaks Recreation Area. Those areas are each one is 1,700 acres. This one at Three Peaks is like 700 acres. And those are, in the provision of our ordinances, new communities, master plan communities that can go in and have a full provision of services like a municipality would. And they had provisions when those plans were approved to provide central water, sewer, the whole infrastructure for new communities. The existing Tier 3s, as explained in the tiering ordinance and the general plan, identifies Tier 3s as a urbanizing future possible municipality or urbanizing area where some form of central services are provided. In these cases, they both have common community post office, water systems. They have water companies. They don't have sewer in either one of these communities, but they have a sense of community. And the idea of Tier 3 is that they would take that sense of community and build on that. And we identified the perimeters and had a geographic boundary for each of those. Since that time, it's been difficult to implement the same rules for Tier 3, new Tier 3s, as it was for the existing Tier 3s. And when we did a 2005 general plan amendment to the tiering system, we created what's called a SPA zone, which is the specially planned area in Tier 3. And that's how the new Tier 3s were created. They were rezoned for this SPA zone, and they had their kind of own set of rules. In that ordinance in 2005, it specified that those rules did not apply to Summit and Newcastle existing Tier 3s. But since 2005, we've pretty much used the Tier 2 implementation strategies in Tier 3, specifically by saying that you could not subdivide a property outside of Tier 2 unless you were hooked up to central sewer. Now, that meant that in Newcastle and Summit and all the rest of the county outside of the municipalities and their growth areas, which is Tier 2, we wouldn't allow for subdivision of property unless they had central sewer or had a minimum of 5 acres. That's the rule that's specified for the tiers in Tier 2, and we kind of just by default carried that because we were talking the rest of the county into Summit and Newcastle. And really, as we got more and more requests for development in Summit specifically, but also, or Newcastle specifically, but also in Summit, we took a look a little closer at those tier rules and really determined that it wasn't the intent of the 2005 ordinance to push those rules into the existing Summit Newcastle Tier 3s. So this policy simply clarifies that and states that there are really these 4 recommendations that we are going to try to incorporate into this policy that you have. Number 1 is that because we don't have a groundwater study like we do for the Cedar Valley area where the Tier 2 concept came from, that's next to municipalities, and said that unless you hook to sewer, you have to be on 5 acres for septic. That was all based off of the Utah Geological Survey and the USGS doing a study for a groundwater model. And we don't have that in the Summit and Newcastle areas. So we don't really know what the appropriate density is for septics. And so we said we would like to get that and try to figure out what those areas should have for appropriate septic density to protect groundwater. But until we have that, we probably shouldn't be restricting them to the 1 per 5 acres because we don't know that their groundwater situation is the same. And we have a situation where if it's close to a municipality that doesn't have sewer, then they can use the density for septic that municipality has. So for example, Paraguna and Canaraville, in their immediate growth areas, we would allow for a higher septic density because the municipality allows for that in their immediate growth areas in the Tier 2. And we felt like that probably should be, at least until we have a groundwater study, be the case in Summit and Newcastle Tier 3. So that's the number one, is the fact that we don't know what it is. The second recommendation was that, and I'll come back to the groundwater studies in just a minute, but the second recommendation was to prohibit expansion of the Tier 3s until we know, how many more septics and how big the basins are and what the impact of septic would be in those areas. So to just say we're going to allow an expansion of Tier 3 and allow for higher density septic would probably not be good land use planning. And so we said if we're going to allow a higher density for septics in Tier 3, higher than 5 acre minimum, then we ought to at least prohibit the growth of the Tier 3. So that's kind of what works hand in hand with that. We would allow a manipulation of the boundary so that if one area wants to be reduced and grow out on another area, the overall net area wouldn't increase, and that would be okay. The third thing is to then allow subdivision of existing Tier 3s to the similar zoning that's in the area. So for example, and most of Summit is R1/2. Most of Newcastle is R1. We would allow that to continue to subdivide properties similar to those zones within that Tier 3 because we haven't really prohibited it. We're just clarifying that this is Tier 3, not Tier 2, and we're not going to impose that. But historically, we have imposed that, and so this is the purpose of the clarification. Okay? And then number 4 would be to require, if they're going to subdivide and develop in those communities, that they would be required to connect to central sewer, the central water system that's there, and not drill a new well so that it creates another source of groundwater contamination where we have that many septics there. We're not creating another well that would be a source of contamination. So those are the 4 things that are considered.
So question, so you said in Summit, it was 1 acre?
Right.
And
Newcastle, no, Summit's
Newcastle
1/2, Summit's 1.
Or Summit's
There
1.
is some half-acre stuff that was a subdivision that was created out on the east side called Paradise Hills, I think it's called Paradise Hills. That was a subdivision that's R1/2, but the rest of most of Newcastle is R1.
And if they could do a septic system on that, if they didn't.
They could do a new subdivision and have septics on 1 acre lots.
Okay. But they'd have to connect to a central water system. They
Right,
couldn't each drill
right,
their own well.
yeah, the Newcastle water system. So that's the recommendation. It hits on those 4 areas, and it looks like this, and you have a copy of that. We took this from the evaluation of rezoning and tier considerations for tier changes, and just simply changed in number 2 where it talks about that language where it would allow septics in smaller acreage for those areas, that the boundary of Tier 3 could change but not grow, that it would require the connection to central water. And those are the clarifications, again, since this is not an ordinance specific, it's a policy, that these are the considerations that we would look at when we consider a rezone, subdivision, or tier boundary change in the Tier 3 area. okay, to give us policy consistency so that we're treating everybody the same and each property and application the same.
Quick question, you may have already said this. So you said there were two others though that we've done besides. Does this all apply to them?
No.
Or they're already.
They've already been instigated tier 3 and already have all of their infrastructure for tier 3, central water, central sewer. It was all been approved through a development agreement. That's the big difference between these existing tier 3s and the new tier 3s is that the new tier 3s with this specially planned area also has a development agreement that specifies all of the infrastructure requirements, the zoning, the density, the road structure, everything is identified through and agreed upon through a development agreement.
Okay, and quickly, what about Cedar Highlands? Would they be considered for tier 3? I know they've gone in and out of
We have that on the agenda for this coming, we have Planning Commission meeting this Thursday. And we've given that some consideration for whether, because it comes out, it's been in a tier 2 all these years. Okay, and it was currently in tier 2, even though the municipal boundary, it was their municipal tier 2. Okay, the tier 2 is essentially the growth area of the municipality. So everything that wasn't the municipality itself, but was around that, was tier 2, and we just left the tier 2 boundary the same. So it's currently in place as tier 2. We considered, and part of the reason that's on the agenda for this coming Planning Commission meeting is because we want to modify that tier boundary for the tier 2, because when they incorporated, they grew substantially beyond what our previous tier 2 was. Now we want to bring that tier 2 back to what it was, or consider it a tier 3 and zone those properties. Those properties coming out of the de-annexation aren't zoned anything now. And so we want to designate a zoning for that, and that's why it's on the agenda for consideration. For discussion at this Planning Commission meeting, then we'll hold a public hearing for zoning the property and come back with a recommendation at a future time. And consideration of the re-tiering. The difference that it would make based on this policy change leaves us somewhat fearful of making it a tier 3, because up there you know the history of the slide concerns, and in 2010 we rezoned all that property back to A20. So there was even the Cedar Highlands that was R1/2, and we had some R5 around it. Prior to it being incorporated, it was zoned all rezoned A20 back in 2010. This policy, if it were tier 3, would allow, depending on where you drew the tier 3 boundary, but Cedar Highlands and that immediate area that was previously part of the tier 2 then could subdivide down to half acres, because that's what's there, half acre. And we don't think it's appropriate to have half acre lots in the rest of that basin up above Cedar Highlands. And so that's why we don't think it would fit with the tier 3 under this new rule. If we said the prior interpretation and enforcement that it would be a minimum of 5 acres, then we'd probably be okay with it being a tier 3. But now that's the rule in tier 2. We rezone, make that tier 2, and then it limits it to 1 per 5 acres.
Thank you.
What was and this went through the Planning Commission?
This went through Planning Commission
What was their
with a
feeling?
recommendation to adopt. They thought that it was good policy. They liked it. I've had several conversations actually with the manager of the Newcastle water system. They like this. The Christensens have some property that's in the tier 3 that they want to develop. They like this. The Holts are proposing a subdivision out there. They like this. They think it makes sense to require the development of the water system to expand and tie these areas in. And so everything we've heard back so far, they think that it's positive. They were somewhat frustrated with the ability of not being able to subdivide down less than 5 acres, which is what we've been telling people previously. And so this helps clarify and allow for that development. And feel like it's it's reasonable based on what we know.
So they can go down to
We just don't know.
1 acre.
They
in
could do 1 acre
Newcastle.
in Newcastle and half
Half
acre
acre.
in Summit, just because that's what the majority of the zoning is. So before any further action, let me just make kind of a plea regarding the groundwater and the fact that we don't have an understanding of what the groundwater is. I've requested of the Utah Geological Survey to do a groundwater study in these two areas. They've told me that they would be glad to do that, and they thought that they could do that within about a year's time. Part of the concern with this approach is, are we now locking the tier 3 that can't grow or expand anymore, and what is the appropriate density? Without a groundwater model, it's really hard to do that, and that's why we felt allowing the increased density within the tier but not growing the tier was acceptable for now. But it's only a temporary solution, and that this ought to only be a temporary policy until we such time can get a groundwater study. The Utah Geological Survey figures it's about $50,000 to do one, and it will take about a year's time, and they could get to it in about 6 months to a year. So the best scenario would be 2 years before we really had the results of a study. And it costs money. But they would be willing to fund it at about half. So I would like to think that in this coming budget, we could budget part of that, either maybe one of them or the other, or possibly both, to do a match for a grant that would fit with the Utah Geological Survey to do a groundwater model and do a septic density analysis for those two areas, so that we had a much better feel for that. So I will be coming back through budget process, and I just want you to know where it's coming from. It's a result of this policy and the idea that we want to try to protect the groundwater in those communities, to know what kind of groundwater concerns we have and what septics are going to do in that area, and that will help guide the interpretation of this policy in the future, in the direction that Summit and Newcastle could develop and grow or not, or pull back, or we'd have some science to base our decisions on. So
okay.
That's about the figures we're looking at, and we'd like you to be considering that in this upcoming budget.
All right. Any other questions?
No.
Entertain a motion.
I move approval of Iron County Policy Tier 3 of Summit and Newcastle, considerations and clarifications for tier boundary amendments, rezoning, or subdividing property in existing in existing tier in existing tier 3 areas of Iron County.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded as described. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate that. I think that'll help be consistent and give us some good direction for those areas.
Thank you. All right. Taking care of item number 7. Agenda item number 8, discussion and possible approval of a vehicle sale to the Newcastle Water Company and Newcastle Reservoir Company that was used by the Hamlin Valley Fire and Newcastle Fire Department. 2005 Dodge 3, requested by Kyle Christensen.
Well, maybe I can speak to it, and then Mike can talk about the email he received. Pardon? Okay. First of all, yeah, they've been requesting something like this for a while. Kyle and I narrowed it down to this Dodge. There was also a Ford that was listed in in the commission packet. And so we had kind of verbally talked about that it would probably be a good exchange for the Newcastle Water Department's They had two water companies that were going to kind of share this vehicle. However, Commissioner Blake got an email from Ryan Riddle.
So and we met last week, Dan and I, Ryan Riddle and Mike Phillips from Cedar, to start some talks about a long-term goal as far as fire response in the West Desert. Part of that is to evaluate our equipment that we have and what the potential needs for equipment, and make sure that we have what we need there. In fact, Wednesday night, we're going to go out there and meet and kind of evaluate equipment and start that process. Ryan Riddle sent me an email just asking that there's a possibility that this vehicle is still needed for fire in the West Desert, if we could hold off on that decision until we evaluate that need a little bit more before we get rid of a vehicle that we might have to turn around and replace.
All right. So no action on Nate, right? We have
One
that.
question on that. Do they need both of those vehicles? There's two.
So there were two. Like I say, when Kyle and I spoke about it, he expressed interest mainly in that Dodge.
The 05.
And you're gonna meet with him this week, you were thinking?
Wednesday night.
And so I wonder if maybe, because this is important but not urgent, maybe they could have the discussion with the fire folks and also to see the Dodge had been infested with some kind of vermin. So it was a newer vehicle, but had some issues. And so,
Pretty common out in that area.
right.
I just have to tell you.
And so, yeah, and so the Ford was a much older truck and maybe a little less reliable. So he was slightly less interested, but I think they would be glad to have whatever they could. So after Commissioner Blake meets with them, maybe they can have a resolution.
You'll bring it back.
Yeah, well, we'll figure out exactly what that looks like this week, and then I'll figure it out and bring it back.
Okay. All right. Very good. Taking care of 9 and 10. 11, discussion and possible approval of a contract with Carter Enterprises for an addition to the Iron County Senior Citizen Center. 489 East, 200 South, Cedar City, Utah. Lester.
Okay, we had a previous commission meeting, a special meeting that where we opened and approved the contractor for Carter's to do the construction for the remodel for the senior center. This is due to needing more room for COVID, so that people have more space to do their activities. They can open for those purposes. I sent this to Carter's. He actually found, so he is good with the contract as well. I don't know if Mike had time to go over it, but
Some last week.
yeah, it's the same one. The last one I haven't really changed anything from the last one other than my original spelling errors. We were agreeing to some interesting things, but one of those words that was spelled, yeah, I spelled a different word, and lucky enough someone caught it because I never did. I can't remember what it was, but it was pretty funny. So the total contract for this is for $704,600. There is the time frame for this project. The completion date is January 8th, 2021, and after that point, there is a $100 day. What's it called now?
Liquidated
damages. Thank you. On that.
Sorry, which day?
It is January 8th. Any delay past that will have to be documented in writing. There are stipulations in there for weather and material delays. It is a construction project. We understand that you have those issues. In here, it also specifies going in this project because of the time frame that we have to build it in. We are going in knowing that there is some unknowns. And I actually have them listed. Knowing possible changes, relocating sewer foundation on existing building, potential power upgrade, and elevator shaft. There's some, we're having to work out with the architect and us on what,
There's question whether it needs to be block or
if we can just use like shaft wall or double drywall. There's just some minor little things. That's if it has to be blocked, that's obviously costs a lot more than they originally budgeted. But
Was there, Lester, I know we talked about Davis-Bacon. Are we going to pursue that or not? Do we need to?
I am not sure on that. I never got a straight answer.
I know that most wages, I've dealt with Davis-Bacon in the years past in Utah, and most are paying those wages anyways. So it might be a moot point. I don't know.
I think it is. It's the paperwork that they need to get back with. It is listed in the criteria.
Okay.
That contract's fairly
You
thick.
might want to follow up with Chad and just make
Yeah.
sure we're covered on that.
But in that packet, I have the documentations from the bidding process and also from Carter's on their proposal, because the contract refers to them. I felt they probably should be all tied together.
Okay. All right. So, any other questions on this?
No.
I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be awesome for our senior citizens, and they're used to spread out, as you said, because of COVID and those concerns. I think it's going to be just a great project. So, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay. Would move for approval of the contract with Carter Enterprises for an addition to the Iron County Senior Citizen Center located at 489 East, 200 South in Cedar City. And the contract amount is $704,600. That didn't sound right. $704,600.
Yes, that's correct.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the contract with Carter Brothers for the addition to the Iron County Senior Center located on 489 East, 200 South, Cedar City. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there a contract I need to sign?
Yeah, I'll have you sign this other one.
I did see a
This one looked like it was redlined.
Yeah, those red lines are purposely redlined. They were. Those are just indicating they were after that previous meeting.
Okay.
Do I sign this one or that one?
You sign both of them, and then Carter will sign theirs or one, and they keep one. And I'll give them back. The nice thing is this material's already been ordered.
Thank you, Lester. Okay. We'll go to agenda item number 12, personnel, with Sheriff first. Approval of a new certification pay rate adjustment for Jaden Thomas, effective date 9/21/2020.
Hello.
Hi, Jennifer.
So yes, first on the agenda is for the Sheriff's Office. Jaden Thomas received certification for his victim advocacy, and it is a request that he receives a pay increase to fall within the county guidelines, effective date 9/21/2020.
Okay. All right.
Do I just do that, do that one alone then? I guess. Oh yeah, that's okay. I move approval of in the Sheriff's Department new certification pay rate adjustment for Jaden Thomas, effective 9/21/2020.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the new certification pay rate adjustment for Jaden Thomas, effective date 9/21/2020. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I talked with some folks, the Cedar City Police Department. I'm trying to think who I talked to when last week. They were really appreciative of Jaden, said he's doing a fantastic job.
I've heard the same from SUU as well.
They were, they had a couple of things that were a little bit sticky, and they said they really appreciated the way that Jaden handled it and gave him thumbs up. So
Definitely.
Awesome.
I've heard nothing but good, so. That's good.
All right.
All right, next is the big that time of year again. Insurance renewal process for 2021. The insurance committee met with PHP as well as Gallagher last week, same with the three of you. It was very good to speak with them and kind of not necessarily even need to hash out some things because it came in at a great rate this year. So for the year 2021, the medical insurance plan came in at a 1.5% increase, which is a total of $36,799. Putting that in perspective, last year's renewal process was at a 7.5%, which cost the county $178,881. So this year is good news. EMI Health, which covers dental and vision, insurance came in with no changes, so all is good there. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer that. I've got all the rough breakdowns if you need it per person, but
What was the 2020 number?
36,799.
Sorry, last
Oh,
year.
last year's was 178,881.
Okay, thanks.
I was impressed in our meeting with Gallagher and their explanation. I was tickled with that result. It was good.
Yeah, and he even discussed how we're on the right trend to receive even a better rebate than.
Yeah, that meeting was very was very positive. I even said in that meeting I dread the insurance meetings.
Right.
I hate it, but it was good.
Yeah.
It was good to hear.
Definitely.
All right.
All right.
Do we need to approve that one? We need a motion on that, I guess.
I believe so.
So move for approval of our employee insurance benefits for the 2021 plan year, noting that in medical benefits we're looking at medical benefits we're looking at a 1.5% increase, which is $36,000. Note that in our dental and vision there is no increase. That's my motion.
Second.
Insurance benefits for the year 2021 year plan year. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Non-delegated items, prairie dog matters, anything there? Or county boards? Seeing none, we will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you. Appreciate your attendance.
Are we gonna get something to eat?
It's a 1:30's BLM.
Yeah.